It all kicks off in an epic battle where the barbarian is the last guy standing against thousands of opponents, while some magic completely locks down his body. He also gets hit with a silent spell that ruins any chance of making a run for it or yelling for backup. Right then, a shady curse drops on our warrior, heavily nerfing all his physical stats. The enemy onslaught keeps coming with a slashing spell, aimed to strike our guy without an ounce of mercy. To top it off, the barbarian gets caught by an ultimate elimination technique that only the enemy bosses can pull off. The warrior stumbles across the battlefield after taking such a devastating hit. Completely out of juice, he ends up hitting the dirt, totally unable to keep his stance to continue the fight. One of the commanders is practically glowing with confidence, totally sure that victory is already in the bag. But he quickly notices something weird going on behind his back and turns around. Totally mind-blown, the boss is caught off guard by the barbarian, who casually drops the memo that he's still breathing. The only reason this human survived an extreme war is thanks to a contract made with the angels, who hooked him up with special perks like understanding any language. A skeletal creature calls the warrior Wolfgang and says he's completely hard-headed for even being there. Not loving the comment, the hero asks if the creature has lost its mind. Keeping its cool, the skull claps back, asking how a normal human would ever think it's a good idea to jump into a clash against underworld monsters. Right then, a firm footstep hits the ground with serious force. Agreeing with his buddy, Wolfgang jumps up, totally ready to strike. The hero comes down with a heavy blow, claiming he lost his sanity a long time ago, all thanks to his own enemies. With the opponents getting wiped out left and right, it becomes super clear that the divine buffs he received were off the charts. The angels gave him total unconditional support so he could wage this one-man war. Dashing forward, the warrior takes out multiple enemies in one go with a pinpoint strike. Out of all his powers, one stands out as the ultimate game changer, while the opponent tries to tell the barbarian to just give up. Ignoring the chatter, Wolfgang lands a straight punch right to the enemy's face, using the crazy regeneration skill gifted by the fallen angel. His skeletal ally explains that even lost limbs heal in a flash, including the hero's own head if it ever came down to it. Staring down his target, the warrior warns that he's gonna keep swinging until he takes that boss down for good. Having an immortal human wrecking, the enemy forces turns into an absolute nightmare on the battlefield. Wolfgang shows off his massive confidence and jokes that the opponent must be super curious about what's going on. The skull sarcastically asks who the real monster is here, warning that it's way too late to regret the trash talk. Over 10,000 enemies end up grouping in a single spot to try and halt his unstoppable rampage. A blazing fast arrow is fired from above, proving that this was the perfect spot to cut the hero's connection to the angels. Even knowing full well he was walking right into a trap, the barbarian decided to crash the party anyway. The projectile ends up tagging him in the shoulder, serving as a quick reminder that his only reason for joining this extreme war was payback. He was specifically hunting the jerk responsible for taking out his entire family back in the day. His target was the exact same boss hiding and waiting up high in the fortress. This whole master plan to lure the hero up there was cooked up by that very commander. Soon enough, an absolute storm of arrows rains down on the warrior from above. Multiple projectiles hit the barbarian dead on, doing some serious damage. With the plan working perfectly, the divine buffs totally lose their juice inside that isolated zone. Riding that advantage, the boss mocks the hero, saying no matter how hard he fights at the end of the day, he's just a regular human. Tired of the yapping, Wolfgang rips an arrow out of his chest and lets the enemy know he missed one tiny detail. Super ticked off by the sheer audacity, the opponent throws insults at the warrior, clearly losing his cool. Sensing the incoming danger, the commander orders all his troops to charge with everything they've got to stop the barbarian. The hero gears up for the clash, dropping the second reason why he can take on entire armies solo. He isn't just an average Joe anymore, he's a being that has totally shattered all limitations. The boss is paralyzed just watching the overwhelming energy starting to pour out of the opponent's body. Wolfgang proves he's a relentless warrior who levels up with every battle, capable of crushing an entire empire's forces with his bare hands. A colossal explosion of power wipes the area clean, leaving only the enemy boss and the hero left standing. Flexing his absolute determination, the warrior makes it crystal clear that this raw strength is the true essence of who he is. The surviving commander starts totally panicking when he realizes his entire army was just wiped by one dude. Taking a slow walk up to his target, the barbarian points out how they always spit the same lines, but tells him it's finally game over. Staring down his prey, Wolfgang declares the fall of his enemies and the success of his payback, planning his trip back to his homeland. His main goal now is to rebuild the world those creatures wrecked so long ago. He dreams of living life as an adventurer from his era, again traveling, hunting monsters and looting treasures. Heavily injured, the boss refuses to take the L, claiming his race won't be wiped out that easily. The opponent preps one last trick and asks if it makes any difference if he chooses his own exit right then and there. Totally unfazed, the hero replies that it won't change the tragic fate waiting for the rest of his crew. Launching into an attack, Wolfgang warns he's not letting the boss run from the consequences by taking his own out. In a total act of desperation, the commander casts a super ancient, heavy-duty spell right before getting hit. An intense petrification spell smacks the hero dead center mid-jump. Completely confused, the barbarian tries to process what's happening as a blinding light takes over everything. Up in the skies, the angels are totally lost on the situation and feel massive frustration that the enemy boss managed to survive. While panic sets in among the celestial squad, Wolfgang realizes he's lost all feeling and hearing in his own body. The warrior's vision starts blurring as he watches the enemy walk away scot-free from the battle. Seeing his target slip away into the shadows, the barbarian uses his last ounce of strength to try and block the escape. Trapped in an empty darkness, he swears he's still gonna hunt the boss down and get his family back, begging for the whole situation to just stop. All of a sudden, the scene jumps to a modern-day guy who drops an exclamation while admiring something. Super hyped, the kid checks out a statue of the hero on display in a museum, blown away by how realistic the piece looks. As soon as the human gets close, Wolfgang's mind boots up, totally confused about why he's hearing this guy's voice. A tour guide calls out to the kid, telling him not to wander off from the group, getting a quick reply back. Slowly, the warrior's stone hand starts to twitch, and he figures out that the thousand-year curse has finally worn off. In one quick move, the hero wakes up and grabs the head of the distracted kid, standing right in front of him. With zero patience left, the barbarian just tells the guy to get out of his way right now. Using all his brute strength, Wolfgang completely shatters the stone shell trapping him and breaks free for good. The tourists around are left in absolute shock, seeing the museum exhibit literally come to life right in the middle of the hallway. The warrior plants his feet on the ground, feeling the weight of his free body after being stuck for so incredibly long. Looking around with total disgust, he decides this weird place is packed with annoying, loud humans. Locked onto his goal, the warrior swears that now that he can move, he's gonna hunt down that Devil House punk. Wasting no time, he summons his status window. Checking out the stats, the barbarian spots something that really grabs his attention. Mind blown by the numbers, he realizes the amount of demons in the world has skyrocketed. The massive count on the screen leaves Wolfgang totally clueless about what this so-called hunter class is. Super frustrated, the MC wonders why he's once again the only barbarian left standing. His gaze is heavy with the confusion of the moment, showing how hard he's trying to process this crazy reality. Then the warrior shifts his focus to the room and spots several dudes in suits circling the place, totally lost on who they could be. With that, he wonders if all this drama is just because he chucked some guy at a wall. The barbarian's brain tries to figure out if the issue is the knocked-out dude, or if the panic is just because he's standing there. The armed guards look pathetically weak in Wolfgang's eyes. Trying to get a grip on the situation, one of the guards flashes a badge, introducing himself as a guild member and demanding the hero's ID. He has no clue what an ID is and just listens as the guy warns him he better cooperate, suggesting he hand over a hunter's license. The warrior's patience totally runs out, leading him to step up and grab the target by the neck with crazy force. Panic hits the other guards when they see their buddy get grabbed like that, making them point their weapons right at the barbarian. The hero stares the guy down and drops a threatening warning that he is not the kind of guy they can try to control. He lifts the target off the floor like it's nothing, but a female voice screams in a panic, begging him to hold on a minute. A young girl steps up hesitantly, asking if the warrior is the famous Wolfgang. She rushes to the middle of the hall, trying to cool things down before the whole situation goes sideways. Surprised by the interruption, the barbarian drops the guard and demands to know how this stranger knows his name. Yeren Kang introduces herself as a member of the Hunters Association and asks to chat somewhere else, catching an instant rejection. Already turning his back, the warrior shows zero interest in hearing what this human has to say. The girl flashes a friendly smile, promising to hook him up with some food and a comfy place to crash if he accepts her invite. The hero's stomach loudly growls at that exact second, totally giving away that he's starving after being a statue for so long. Walking down the streets of the modern city, Yeren points out how much the world has changed, while Wolfgang just wants to know where the heck they are going. The new slang leaves the barbarian curious about what a hunter actually is, with the girl explaining they are folks trained to fight demons and monsters. A black car pulls up to grab them, right as the girl details that the most dangerous creatures are kept under government watch. Inside the ride, she spills that the association also scouts new talent, and that Wolfgang himself was part of a discovery project. Stepping out of the car, the rep explains that everyone thought he was just a statue until they figured out the thousand-year curse. Walking into a massive building, Yeren guides the hero, complaining that there are barely any high-tier hunters to handle the endless wave of demons. The warrior checks out the city view through the glass, listening to Yeren say she hatched an idea the second she found him petrified. The barbarian's sudden silence makes the hunter turn around to see what caught his eye. She watches him closely, noticing her guest is absolutely laser-focused on something on the table. Wolfgang stares at a huge, freshly delivered pizza with an intense, totally hypnotized look. Once they sit in the office, the girl offers up the food, encouraging the MC to dig in since he must be starving. The hunter mentions they tried using healing skills to break his curse, but it was a no-go, all while the warrior grabs his first slice. He takes a massive bite and is totally blown away by the flavor, wondering how humans managed to create such elite food. Enjoying the meal, the hero points to a dark bottle on the table and asks what the heck that is. The woman explains it's soda, telling him to give it a shot and promising it pairs perfectly with the pizza. Without second-guessing, Wolfgang tips the giant bottle back and takes a huge gulp of the unknown drink. Yeren shyly asks if it tastes good, a bit nervous about how he'll react. Wiping his mouth, the barbarian admits the carbonation going down his throat startled him, but he gives the refreshing drink some major props. The relief of pleasing her guest makes the girl smile, giving him the green light to eat as much as he wants. She asks permission to run a few questions by him, guessing the warrior has already figured out he's in a totally different era. Wolfgang confirms he noticed the shift with a dead serious look, thinking back to the weird stuff he saw out the car window. Yeren's explanation about the current times reveals they are in the 21st century, asking right after what year he used to live in. The hero confesses he has no clue what her year counting means, totally lost on the terminology. Digging into his memory, he mentions that when he was born, people said 1,000 years had passed since the founding of Rome. Excitement takes over the woman. She slams her hands on the table and celebrates that her theory was 100% right. With a massive smile, she realizes Wolfgang seriously jumped straight from the Middle Ages into the modern world. Yeren almost cries tears of joy getting to talk to someone from way back then, since she actually works as an archaeological hunter. The barbarian totally brushes off the small talk, ignoring her hype and demanding they bring out another pizza. He pats his stomach, pretty happy to finally be getting full, checking out the empty boxes on the table. Wolfgang cuts right to the chase, switching topics to ask if the girl knows where that Devil House punk is. The rep asks who this target is, getting a quick answer from the warrior that it's the scumbag who turned him into stone. Asking for a minute, Yeren grabs her phone to run a search in the hunter database, leaving the barbarian super curious about the tech. The app turns up zero info, making the woman question if the target is even a monster. He confirms the enemy is a heavy-hitting demon who managed to slip away from their last fight, keeping his posture rock solid. The warrior's eyes fill with determination as he declares that the second he finishes off this demon, he's heading back to Germania to reunite with his family. The hunter feels bad for him and tells him he needs to face the harsh reality that his homeland just doesn't exist anymore. The MC repeats the word in total disbelief, shocked to hear that his territory now belongs to some other nation called Nor. He bitterly figures out that 1,000 years flew by and everything he knew is just history now, staring at his own reflection in the window. A quiet rage takes over the barbarian. He clenches his fist so hard the glass starts to crack. Unable to hold back, he throws a heavy punch at the structure, shattering the surface with the brutal impact. Wolfgang makes it absolutely clear, with eyes full of anger, that he has to bring his family back. Yeren tries to be logical, arguing that even if he finds his relatives, way too much time has passed. The warrior cuts her off to explain that their resurrection was the whole condition for his divine contract, begging her to find the demon. The hunter gently promises that if the creature is still active in this world, she's definitely going to track it down. He agrees to roll with the plan, accepting this totally unexpected partnership. The barbarian knows very well humans don't do favors for free, guessing the association has an angle and promises to fight with everything he's got. The only condition the hero demands for the deal is that she does absolutely everything in her power to track his enemy down. Walking back through the halls, Yeren gives him the heads up that the only way to legally operate in this era is by grabbing a hunter's license, since he has no citizenship. She praises his obvious combat skills, while Wolfgang just grumbles about how overly complicated these people's lives are. Outside the building, the girl tries to hype him up, saying there are tons of perks to becoming an official hunter. Curiosity gets the better of the hero, leading the rep to explain that the gig guarantees housing and cash depending on the rank you hit. Continuing the chat in the car, Yeren explains that passing the admission exam guarantees a prize of 10 million, a value the barbarian can't even fathom. She points out there's an even better perk to all this. With a little luck during the test, he might manage to form a pact with beings called constellations. The warrior asks about the term as the car pulls up to the gym. The hunter clears up that they are guardian deities of the stars, who always back and favor talented folks. The hero mentions he knows angels, but this is the first time he's hearing about these entities. The girl justifies that it makes sense, since they only showed up in the world 15 years ago. Inside the massive gym, Wolfgang spots an insane amount of people and asks if they all want to be hunters. The rep confirms, explaining that today is the promotion test for the academy students. Pointing to the center of the room, she draws his attention to a huge structure right in the middle of the hall. It's the testing wall, loaded with the power of the shield and spear constellation. To pass, a candidate just needs to hit the barrier and score over 500 points. The barbarian sizes up the target and claims the thing would shatter with just a tap from him. Ignoring the dude's confidence, Yaren just asks him to tag along. At the front desk, the clerk wants to know if he's the next candidate. The girl quickly drops the guest's full name, verifying his ID. Because he's an undocumented foreigner, the receptionist demands a guarantor to greenlight the test. Without missing a beat, the hunter uses her certified archaeologist title to take the fall and signs the paperwork. Down in the arena, a guy dressed like a Spartan warrior gets into position holding a weapon. Yaren signals that the exam is about to kick off and points at Leonida's spear. She details that the constellation's power will bless the testing wall the second the weapon is slammed into the structure. The examiner raises the spear, which glows like crazy with golden energy before coming down. The weapon hits the sacred ground, making magic patterns light up all over the stone surface. A massive circle of light pops up instantly, showing the setup is ready to measure the participants' strength. Watching all this drama, the warrior figures modern humans make way too much noise over nothing. The examiner asks the crowd to quiet down, officially announcing the start of the evaluations. Suddenly, Wolfgang's bored look totally changes when he senses a dangerous aura flooding the room. A divine message floats in the air, revealing that the constellation found someone interesting and is dying for them to take the test right away. The crowd goes wild seeing the alert, dying to know who managed to catch the eye of such a heavy-hitting entity. Taking back control, the staff calls up the first candidate, asking Ko-Yuna to step up. The girl walks to the center of the arena with total confidence. Yaren recognizes her instantly as a member of a famous family known for their spear arts. Standing in front of the wall, the girl flexes an impressive energy, making the archaeologist guess she already has a provisional contract. The rep figures the divine message makes sense now, expecting to see a real contractor's power pop off among the students. Locked on the target, Yuna dashes forward wrapped in intense blue flames. Channeling all her strength, she slams the magic barrier with a devastating strike. The electronic board flashes and shows an awesome score of 1,254 points. The hero casually asks if that was a solid result. The hunter promises it's a level worthy of active pros and super rare for a basic promotion test. Smirking with pride, Yuna is totally convinced Leonidas was hyped to see her. But the system window keeps spamming the alert for the chosen one to hurry up and take the test. Absolutely shocked, the candidate's eyes go wide when she realizes that divine message was never meant for her. Making the embarrassment even worse, a new notification pops up saying her guardian constellation was super disappointed by her skills and canceled the contract on the spot. Yuna grabs her own arm, completely crushed, unable to process that she just lost her powers. A short-haired dude shoves the girl out of the way super disrespectfully, telling her to move and claiming the hype could never be for her when he's around. Treating his classmate like total trash, he calls her weak and mocks her for losing her temporary contract. The crowd quickly recognizes the arrogant guy as Kim Jinwoo, agreeing that the entity could only be hyped for him. The system announces that the descendants of the barbarians loan their power to the candidate. The kid's arm swells up fast as veins pop under his skin. Prepping a punch loaded with red energy, he arrogantly claims nobody else can be the MC while he's standing there. Kim unleashes a booming attack against the wall, screaming that all the divine attention belongs strictly to him. The impact sends out a shockwave that spooks Yaren, making her question if that's really just a simple student's power. The board flashes an insane 2,039 points. The audience loses it seeing the kid break the 2,000 mark. People in the stands whisper that this score is completely unheard of for this exam, perfectly justifying the constellation's hype. Someone guesses if this power isn't basically on par with a high-ranking official hunter. Hearing the praise, the candidate thinks he might be even stronger than that. Bathing in his own ego, Kim looks up and literally asks the sky if that hit was enough for the hero they were looking for. He lets out a cocky laugh, waiting to soak up the ultimate praise and approval. Instead, the arena gets crushed by an insane pressure when Leonidas roars in pure rage. The kid collapses to his knees on the ground, totally unable to handle the weight of the divine fury. Sweating bullets and pinned to the floor, the guy tries to figure out why all this anger is aimed at him. Desperate, he demands an answer from his own guardian constellation, reminding them that the barbarians promised Leonidas would be thrilled. The arrogant kid beats his chest, claiming to be an epic warrior who has already wiped out thousands of monsters. Having zero clue what went wrong with his flex, the guy gets interrupted by heavy footsteps walking up behind him. Stopping right next to the fallen candidate, Wolfgang coldly orders him to get lost, letting him know he's not the guy they're looking for. Kim jumps up, furious at the interruption. He calls the man an old geezer and tells him to wait his turn in the bleachers, since today isn't his test day. Keeping his cool, the barbarian fires back, asking if the kid's turn isn't already up. The tone gets way darker when he warns that he's holding back because of a promise, and tells him to step aside. Feeling his ego bruised, the student grabs the guy's shoulder hard and asks if his words sound like a joke. The air around the two gets super heavy instantly as the hero turns his head. A deadly, ruthless glare is locked onto the insolent kid. Tension grips the entire crowd, with Yaren watching the drama without even blink. The warrior's pupils shrink, carrying an overwhelming pressure that could freeze anyone dead in their tracks with fear. Breaking the silence, Wolfgang questions the kid about this so-called entity protecting him. He demands to know how the punk dares to treat the descendants of the barbarians so casually and orders him to apologize right now. Getting his swagger back, the student mocks the warning, saying that even though they are late-blooming beings with low rep, they can't be disrespected by some random nobody. The cocky kid points his finger right in the guy's face, warning that acting like this will only draw the deity's wrath. The barbarian doesn't flinch at the threat, calmly suggesting they hear the answer straight from the source. Staring at the gym's ceiling, he drops his full name loud and clear. The MC declares that if the entity is really a descendant of his people, it'll remember that name. An invisible force violently launches Kim backward. He screams in panic, having zero clue what just hit him. A massive aura explodes in the center of the arena, revealing the spiritual manifestation of a giant warrior projected in the air. Yaren's jaw drops, stuttering as she recognizes the super-rare phenomenon of a constellation's physical descent. With a deep voice that echoes through the whole place, the deity speaks to Wolfgang with massive respect, calling the man the hero of the barbarians. The entity tries to cool things down, explaining it wasn't the one who lowered itself to a common title. The being throws all the blame on the ignorance of the kid who failed to recognize the living legend standing there. Terrified of offending the ultimate ancestor, the spirit begs the warrior to forgive the kid's absolute lack of common sense. Sighing, the hero agrees to make an exception and let the mess slide. However, he demands immediate action from the deity, pointing out that the child is clearly abusing the power he was gifted. The constellation agrees without a second thought, swearing that dropping the hammer was the plan all along. Kim plummets from the sky hard, totally losing the buff that was keeping him on his feet. The kid kisses the floor violently, crushed by the punishment and stripped of all his previous swagger. Red warning windows spam the air, confirming the entity permanently severed the contract with the student and every single member of his family. The archaeologist watches the judgment unfold, totally stunned. She wonders what kind of living legend this dude is to make a supreme being apologize in person. The dust starts to settle in the arena, revealing only the firm boots of the barbarian standing right in the middle of absolute silence. Looking up at the massive spirit, the barbarian recognizes the entity's name and asks if he's really Leonidas. Keeping his stance solid, Wolfgang mentions he has stuff to do and will need to flex a little power, asking if the divine being can handle it. The giant spear stuck in the middle of the arena starts glowing like crazy with stored energy. The system pops up saying the constellation was deeply moved by the hero's presence, thanking and praising his spirit. With an intense look, the warrior decides that since the entity cranked up its own power, he should probably show off his own. A colossal explosion of aura bursts from the barbarian's body, cracking the floor and sweeping through the entire gym. The force of the blast knocks the students backward, leaving everyone panicking under the crushing pressure. A bunch of kids try to shield themselves from the cutting wind, barely able to stay on their feet. Watching it all in shock, Yaren realizes this is way past just a basic hunter exam. The girl watches the guy in the center of the energy storm, grasping just how crazy the situation is. It becomes super obvious to the archaeologist that, in reality, the warrior is the one testing the constellation. The MC stands unfazed in front of the divine weapon, flexing a totally dominant vibe. Casually, he asks if it isn't useless for the entity to try and resist, suggesting it just give up since he has zero plans to lose. The energy bursts again, creating a giant pillar of light that takes over the whole space. One of the students starts freaking out, noticing the power levels just spiked insanely and soon nobody will be able to hold on. Fearing the worst, a student yells that things are gonna get super dangerous if someone doesn't step in right now. Just like that, the power storm totally vanishes, leaving the hunter shocked by the sudden quiet. The crowd is left totally confused by the abrupt end of the flex, wondering if something glitched out. Walking right past the girl, the warrior shows zero care for the absolute mess he just made. He drops a casual "I'm out," since that test totally lost all meaning to him. Not getting it at all, Yaren asks why the sudden exit and what's gonna happen with his qualification exam. Panicking, the examiner yells at the hero, demanding some answers for his wild stunt. The staff guy points in pure shock at Leonida's sacred relic, which starts cracking until it literally crumbles into pieces. Completely lost, the dude freaks out, not knowing how to deal with the loss of such an insanely valuable item. He stares at the remains of the spear turning into dust on the arena floor, realizing just how massive this problem is. Later on, the news is already reporting the incident with the divine artifact, while the barbarian drinks comfortably and comments that the weapon put up a good fight, but just wasn't on his level. The electronic board beeps, calling ticket number 116 to the front desk. With the girl still stressing over the news, the warrior tells her to stop zoning out and pay attention to the call. Up at the Hunter Association counter, the clerk boringly confirms the hero's name. The guy warns them that before handing over the license, they need to settle a compensation fee of 100 million for the busted artifact, reminding them that the guarantor is on the hook if he doesn't have the cash. The archaeologist hits absolute rock-bottom panic mode when she hears that astronomical fine. Trying to soften the blow, the clerk hands over the lowest rank license and tells them they should be thankful, since there were no rules for pricing an unbreakable item. Walking outside, the girl hands him the papers and explains the debt dropped to 90 million thanks to some beginner subsidy. Chilling on the bench, the barbarian asks what the plan is now, wanting to know if that price tag is actually a big deal. Yaren confirms it's a massive amount, pointing out that only top-tier combat hunters make that kind of money. She complains that pros in her field run on sponsorships, and that it'd be practically impossible for a rookie to grind all that cash just by hunting. Unfazed, Wolfgang swears it's all good, saying he can easily clap hundreds of monsters with his bare hands. With a locked-in look, he demands to know where the closest dungeon is so they can head there immediately. The hunter lets him know that to work legally, he's gotta join an agency, which makes him compare the system to the old-school guilds. While walking down the stairs, she explains these companies handle loot collection and secure entry permits for danger zones. The hero quickly figures out they are just middlemen charging a steep cut, but the girl defends that the legal cover makes it worth the hassle. At the door of the first agency, they get shot down instantly by a rep who says they don't take foreigners. On another try, a recruiter denies them, claiming the warrior doesn't have a degree from the official academy. The girl tries to argue, but the guy insists the company prioritizes credit history, something the barbarian clearly lacks. Back on the street, Wolfgang grumbles that modern humans talk way too much, while Yaren tries to explain that trust is key in a lethal line of work. Annoyed by all the rejections, the hero asks why people are giving him bad looks, only to hear that his outfit is drawing way too much attention in this country. The archaeologist suggests he shave his beard to look more presentable, but immediately gives up when she remembers he's wearing literal animal pelts in the middle of downtown. Offended by the idea, the barbarian makes it clear that facial hair is a huge point of pride for his people, and he'd never chop it off. Gripping his outfit tightly, he lets her know this pelt isn't basic, it belongs to the wolf tribe. Yaren cuts the speech short, reminding him that pride doesn't pay the bills, insisting they need to at least fix his look. Out of nowhere, a suit walks up asking if they are looking for an agency, which makes the warrior react super aggressively. Keeping a fake smile, the suited guy tries to break the ice and start a friendly. He introduces his company called Ember Utopia, selling it as the perfect home for hunters. Knowing their rep, the girl whispers that this agency is famous for totally scamming their own workers. Inside the company's office, the rep reveals he's been tracking the hero's rejections and offers a gig with way looser rules. Scanning the room, the barbarian notices they act like street thugs, which perfectly explains why nobody wants to sign with them. The contract on the table offers a garbage profit split and demands basically exclusive dedication for 3 years, throwing in a tiny signing bonus. Super mad, Yaren calls the deal a total scam and strictly forbids her partner from signing. Totally ignoring the warning, Wolfgang slams the table and demands the bonus be bumped to 100 million in exchange for his signature, leaving the girl absolutely stunned. With a cocky smile, he stares down the suit and says that paying off the hunter's debt is a completely separate issue. Surprisingly, the rep agrees to drop that massive bag of cash without much of a fight. However, he slaps on a brutal condition, demanding the contract lock in for 10 years with a 50-50 profit split. Back out on the street, the girl chews her partner out for signing such a toxic deal instantly, asking if he even grasps how bad this is. Totally chill about it, the warrior says he knows the weight of a contract, since he's literally watched civilizations fall over trash deals. Exhausted by his stubbornness, Yaren can't figure out why he'd trap himself in something so messy on purpose. The barbarian explains his life philosophy has always been to fight for those who have his back, and taking on the debt was the least he could do. His main focus is still strictly on hunting the demon that wiped out his tribe back in the day. With his eyes on the prize, Wolfgang recalls his oath to the angels, swearing that bringing his loved ones back is worth any sacrifice. Touched, the hunter apologizes for judging his moves without knowing the heavy baggage behind his tragic past. She flashes a genuine smile, deciding that guiding this warrior through the modern world has just become her own epic quest. The wholesome moment gets cut short by an agency worker letting them know their living quarters are ready to go. Later on, a group chat blows up with the wild news about the sacred spear getting totally destroyed. In the hunter group, Yaren's buddies are mind-blown when they find out the guy behind the mess was the ancient statue that woke up. Laying comfortably in bed, the girl agrees this is a massive moment for world history, despite the financial heart attack she suffered. Relaxed after a crazy day, she keeps texting her friends, totally ready to face whatever comes next alongside the hero. Following the newly signed deal, the agency guy calls the barbarian to show off the housing provided by the company. Yaren watches her partner walk down the hall with a super hesitant look. Really stressed about the warrior adapting, the hunter wonders if he's gonna be okay flying solo, wishing she had bought him a soda to go. Reaching the spot, the suit points to a door and lets him know this is his room from now on. The guy in the suit explains he can raid dungeons from Monday to Friday, making it clear that at least 2 of those days are mandatory for the agency. Not caring about rest days at all, Wolfgang immediately asks if it's cool if he hunts all 5 days of the week, getting a thumbs up from the staffer. To sort out the missions, the agent says the departure schedules will be texted to his brand new phone, so he just needs to check the messages and wait out front. Wishing him a good night, the rep dips to come back tomorrow while the hero finally steps into his new pad. Right off the bat, the warrior is totally let down by the tiny space and the trashy look of the place. Sitting on the cramped bed, he compares the vibe to an old, rundown dwarf tavern, deciding he needs to find a bathroom ASAP. Then the barbarian notices how dark the room is, and grumbles that he needs to score a torch just to see anything. Suddenly, he remembers the piece of tech the agency handed him, pulling the gadget out of the box and noticing the rectangle screen glows. Holding the tiny phone with his giant fingers, he's totally clueless on how to operate it, noticing it's way smaller than his partner's. Picking up a small bank card too, the MC thinks about how this new era is packed with weird stuff that makes zero sense to his ancient brain. Staring at his reflection in the window with the lit-up city behind him, Wolfgang heavily concludes that trying to blend into this new world is gonna be a massive headache. The next day, the exploration team leader checks if all the assigned members are grouped up at the mission rendezvous. The other workers stare at the colossal dude's back, totally weirded out by a giant wearing animal pelts right in the middle of downtown. The boss walks up to check if he's the new hire, instantly warning him that the big guy can't roll into the danger zone wearing that joke of an outfit. Trying to play peacekeeper, Yaren pops up agreeing with the scolding, promising she won't stop him from going, but demanding the guy swear not to attack any humans no matter what. Super impatient with all the constant rules, he just asks why he has to hold back so much against people who get on his nerves. The hunter calmly explains that modern times are way different from the past, and that the guilds are the only thing keeping humanity safe from demons. Plus, the girl points out that the tech they use to gather intel nowadays is infinitely better and faster than back in the day. She makes a serious point to warn him that modern society absolutely zeroes out any kind of random violence between folks. Hitting his weak spot, the rep brings up the scumbag demon the barbarian swore to hunt down to finish his revenge. With a dead serious look, Yaren hopes the warrior grasps how heavy the situation is and plays ball. Her main argument is that if he starts drama and makes enemies out of humans, tracking his real target is gonna be a nightmare. Still salty about the barbarian being rude earlier, the team leader grumbles about the brute's total lack of manners. Flexing his authority again, the boss warns they are heading into a working dungeon, not an action movie, ordering him to throw on a hazmat suit ASAP. The guy points at the massive sword in Wolfgang's hands and asks what the heck that chunk of iron is, getting a blunt reply that it's his personal weapon. Losing patience, the leader says weapons won't be needed for today's gig, ordering him to ditch the blade, take a shower, and change his dirty clothes. Taking the order as literally and bluntly as possible, the warrior just starts stripping right there in the middle of the street with zero shame. Panicking, the staffer turns around shaking with embarrassment, screaming for him to stop doing that in public and calling the big guy a total creep. Flexing his shredded muscles, the barbarian just reminds them he was told to wash up first, demanding to know where the closest stream is to speed things up. Shortly after the public scene, the whole crew is cruising down a dirt road heading to the assigned dungeon. In the backseat, one of the guys yawns and complains about the long drive, but gets quickly shut down by the boss who tells him to shut up and be grateful for the The rookie keeps whining that the zone is ranked B tier, but their actual job is literally just sweeping up dead slime goo off the floor. Justifying his rant, the kid explains he desperately needs to stack cash to pay the insane fee for the promotion exam, making his coworkers doubt he's even cut out for it. Keeping his eyes on the road, the driver points out they're lucky to have a safe gig, riding it out before the loot prices totally crash. Ticked off by the association's greedy cuts, the worker goes back to trashing their garbage pay, making the boss order him to quit if he doesn't want the job. The truck finally rolls up to the massive containment facility blocking the dungeon entrance, with Wolfgang taking it all in calmly from the truck bed. Outside the military-style base, a rep greets the squad, praising them for making the long trip out there. Surprised by the fancy welcome, the leader asks why a high-level supervisor is out here, finding out the guy came to evaluate the new hire's first shift. Without paying much attention to the rest of the crew, the suit claims he has more pressing matters to handle on-site after the inspection. Walking straight up to the MC, the agent gives a super formal greeting, but is absolutely floored by the warrior's terribly fitted outfit. Rocking a short, tight worker's jumpsuit, Wolfgang explains he was forced to wear this weird gear, admitting that at least the fabric doesn't restrict his arms. The supervisor disagrees with his logic, warning that in a toxic slime dungeon, he should be wearing a full biohazard suit just like the rest of the crew. Terrified of getting slapped with a severe penalty, the team leader panics and tries to explain, arguing that the new guy is just too massive and they didn't have his size in stock. Ignoring the drama, the barbarian holds up a basic gas mask and guarantees it gets the job done, reminding them his only task is scooping up dead fragments. Agreeing because they're short on time, the suit tells them to get him the right gear later, since he has to run and check on another dig site. Jumping on the chance, the team boss hits up the supervisor again to double-check if just rocking the mask is cool for sweeping the first floor. The staffer runs the math and figures the starting zone only holds harmless remains, but stresses that past the second floor, things get super deadly due to live creatures. With that, he orders the barbarian to speedrun cleaning the shallow floor and come right back, strictly banning any attempts to go deeper without full protection. The squad finally starts trekking through the damp stone corridors, listening to the leader explain the boring, repetitive job of sucking up slimy carcasses yet again. Inside the dark zone, the team walks with vacuum hoses, while the boss keeps reminding them to watch out for the toxic gas floating in the air. Tracking their moves closely, Wolfgang sizes up the area and asks if there's even enough junk scattered around to make this trip worth the hassle. Then he checks out the team's gear and wants to know how many containers they brought to store all the loot. One of the guys warns that the special glass bottles are insanely heavy, asking if the new dude is ready to put his back into it. While the worker explains that each empty jug already weighs almost 10 kilos, the warrior casually stacks dozens of them on his back tied with a rope, like he's carrying a bunch of feathers. Blown away by the brute strength, the coworker asks if he's ever thrown down with slimes before, only to hear the hero say they are such trash mobs they don't even take up memory space. The kid explains they deal with these weakling monsters daily, right before Wolfgang quickly spots some glowing green puddles down the hall. The coworker shines a light on a small, melted carcass and drops a serious warning, explaining that even when dead, slimes leak poison and should never be touched bare-handed. Totally ignoring the hazard, the barbarian crouches down and plunges his bare hands straight into the stagnant goo, making the worker panic and call him a psych. In absolute panic mode, the guy demands to inspect the warrior's hand up close, completely sure the skin would be melting off from the acid. To the guy's total frustration and shock, the hero's palm is completely flawless without a single burn mark. The partner's eyes pop wide open under his thick visor, unable to process how anyone could walk away untouched from such a lethal toxin. Stuttering hard, the dude tries to flex his authority again and tells him to be careful, while Wolfgang just lifts the goo off the rock, casually playing with it in the air. With a super chill look, the warrior guarantees that no weak-tier acid like that could ever put a dent in his tough body. Yanking the straps, the barbarian rips the gas mask off his face, claiming that wearing that chunk of rubber is just a useless way to choke himself out. The coworker freaks out again, asking if his breathing is okay in that filthy air, hearing the big guy say it's all good and they need to hustle to make some serious cash. Further back in the hallway, the greedy rookie from earlier keeps testing the leader's patience, completely hyper-focused on paying for his promotion exam. The hero's insane hearing picks up the chat from way down the hall, and he tells the group to quit whining, shocking the kid with how sharp his ears are. After a bit more walking, the squad finally hits the deepest, emptiest section of the first floor, surrounded by a bunch of useless barrels. The worker complains about the trash loot run, noting they should have 2 full containers by now and that the odds of taking an L today are huge. Wasting no time on doubts, the barbarian suggests they push straight down to the next floor, but his partner shakes with fear and refuses since it's a restricted zone for low-tier hunters. Staring down the dark stairs with total confidence, Wolfgang says he'll go down solo and clear the mission for them, completely tuning out their desperate yelling telling him to back off. The coworker gulps, warning him that things are about to get super sketchy. Really stressed about his partner lacking gear, the kid asks if this crazy plan is actually gonna work out. Walking down the pitch-black hall, the worker admits something has been heavily messing with his head. Standing before the long staircase, the guy points out the freaky noises echoing from below, while the barbarian instantly recognizes the dark presence of a demon. Miles away at the Hunter Association HQ, Yaren tries calling her partner, only to find out his number is out of service. Staring at her phone screen, the girl finds it super weird that the brand new work phone is already acting up. Nearby, a staffer tells a boss that the lack of plus-size hazmat suits is a huge issue right now. The suit complains that it'll take a whole week to source the gear, suggesting the team just sweep the first floor for now. Right then, the boss grumbles about needing to get back to the extraction zone ASAP, complaining about his own bank account. The second she overhears that, the archaeologist cuts off the manager, asking in a panic if the hero got shipped off to that exact spot. Demanding answers, she pressures him to explain why the warrior's official phone line is completely dead. Furious at the agency's total incompetence, Yaren orders the guy to drive her to the danger zone right this second. Back in the deep tunnels of the second floor, the whole vibe is dominated by acid pools covering every inch of the place. The partner goes into full panic mode seeing a whole creature, screaming that the live specimens are insanely toxic. Completely ignoring the hazard, Wolfgang grabs a chunk of glowing goo with his bare hands, verifying the monster is very much alive. The barbarian tosses the loot straight into the heavy glass jar, noting that going deeper really speeds up the grind. Sealing the container carefully, the coworker celebrates that they've already snagged enough to cover his promotion exam fee. Hyped with the fast results, the kid suggests they bounce back to the surface and lock in their paycheck for the day. Their attention gets hijacked by a secret trapdoor on the floor, revealing a hidden staircase diving even deeper into the dark. Absolutely terrified, the worker peeks over the edge, praying to God the hero hasn't gone down to the third floor. The sketchy hallway is flashing major red flags, making the kid tense up as he remembers they are strictly banned from being down there. Red warning signs block the path, making it clear that trespassing ends in a fatal game over. Shaking while walking down the steps, the partner calls out for the warrior, begging him to ditch that restricted zone. Hitting the main chamber, the guy's jaw drops when he spots a massive cylindrical tank trapping the king of the monsters. Standing right in front of the giant glass, the barbarian checks out the setup while his buddy explains it's a mana injector. The worker spots a small pipe hooked to the base, realizing that's exactly how the smaller mobs escape. With that, he pieces together that the monsters naturally climb toward the light of the upper floors as soon as they spawn. Mind blown by the truth, the kid realizes the guild turned the dungeon into a literal loot farm to print endless cash. Suddenly, the airflow in the damp room shifts hard, grabbing the attention of both intruders. A shower of toxic sludge starts pouring from the ceiling, spooking the worker who tries to figure out what the heck is going on. Pointing up, Wolfgang tells his partner to check out the massive hole in the room's roof. A ton of trash bags and rubble come crashing down the chute, dropping right into the slime pool surrounding the main tank. The warrior watches the scene with pure disgust, asking if humans are literally feeding the creature on purpose. The coworker confirms the theory, noticing the monster is gobbling up all the garbage dumped straight from the surface. The waterfall of trash just keeps coming, exposing the filthy system the company built to make their garbage disappear. Super angry, the worker realizes the suits are double-dipping, using the giant beast to clean the city while farming it for cash. Right then, a system window flashes in front of the hero, automatically popping his celestial language translation skill. Noticing the big guy's posture shift, the kid nervously asks if he's hearing weird voices again. But a terrifying screech echoes through the hall, making the worker whip around in pure panic. Desperate, he points at the tunnels, warning that all the smaller mobs are rushing back to defend their nest. A green wave of monsters charges at lightning speed straight for the two trespassers. One of the slimy freaks launches itself aiming right for the defenseless kid's face. In one fast and flawless move, the barbarian snipes the enemy midair before it even touches the target. The brutal hit obliterates the creature on the spot, splattering acid chunks everywhere. Completely shell-shocked by how fast that attack was, the coworker stammers calling out to his teammate. Inside the containment tank, an exhausted humanoid face forms right in the middle of the giant slime. The entity's tortured voice echoes inside the hero's head, begging for a permanent game over to end this endless nightmare. Locking eyes with the beast, the warrior quickly figures out the creature is totally self-aware and knows how to talk. The pleading keeps ringing in the room, begging for mercy so the suffering can just stop. Standing in the middle of the acid water, Wolfgang stays totally chill facing the desperate cry. Cutting straight to the deal, the barbarian promises to grant the wish, demanding the exact coordinates of the demon devil house in exchange. The entity cries, confessing it has zero intel on where that guy is hiding. Keeping his cool, the MC accepts the honest answer from the drain creature. The monster thrashes around inside its glass prison, fighting against its own mashed-up body. Tension spikes as the smaller mobs crawl up the hero's legs, melting the fabric of his clothes entirely. Visibly ticked off by the mess, Wolfgang declares he's totally out of patience for this garbage. The coworker is confused by the sudden attitude shift, trying to figure out if the giant beast really just asked to be eliminated. Keeping his word, the barbarian walks up to the machinery, ready to hold up his end of the bargain. Shaking with fear, the worker warns that busting up guild property is absolute insanity, while the warrior checks how fragile the glass is. The kid desperately begs for them to back off and act like nothing happened, but the big guy completely blanks his warnings. Grabbing the hero's arm, the partner tries to stop his advance at all costs. The guy jumps in front of the injector with his arms wide open, warning about the devastating fallout of crossing the megacorp. With a heavy, ruthless glare, Wolfgang orders the roadblock to get out of his way this instant. The worker keeps pushing the financial stakes, but the cylinder starts glowing blindingly bright right behind him. The safety glass can't handle the internal pressure and starts cracking from top to bottom. The smaller creatures go into an absolute frenzy, acting totally chaotic and wildly aggressive. Spotting the incoming explosion, the warrior tells his partner to bolt out of there as fast as humanly possible. The magic structure shatters completely, making the worker ask in pure outrage what the heck the big guy is trying to pull. Staring down the chaos, the barbarian stays totally unfazed, promising the kid he doesn't need to stress over him. Crying in panic, the boy sprints up the dark stairs, demanding the hero make it out of that place alive no matter what. Standing solo in the wrecked room, Wolfgang plants his feet and tells the freed monster it's finally his turn to attack. A colossal tidal wave of slime and debris crashes down on the MC in one massive, merciless hit. Outside the containment zone, the sun starts setting, calling it a wrap on the dazed. The Hunter Association van slams the brakes, dropping Yaren and the company manager off at the isolated site. Hopping out of the ride, they press the support crew about the workers, getting the awful update that both guys are still MIA. Outside the dungeon, the manager is still lost and asks if the workers are seriously still down there. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocks the whole area, scaring the absolute life out of the suit. Yaren is totally shell-shocked by the quake and tries to process what the heck is going down. The staffer thinks it's just a regular earthquake, but a crew member asks if he's actually sure about that. Leaning on the dirt near the van, the guy hesitantly agrees, noticing the ground is already chilling out. Worried about the low-tier hunters, he decides to call it into the bosses and check the inside of the facility. The manager asks what the archaeologist is gonna do, and she instantly demands a spare gas mask to tag along. Meanwhile, underground, the creature asks if the warrior is really gonna take it out, but Wolfgang thinks it's bogus for a monster to die locked up and suggests it checks out the outside world first. The giant beast takes the deal and starts wriggling its way out of the busted prison. Taking on a pseudo-human shape in the middle of the goo, the Slime King says it's gonna anchor its soul to the hero's body to tag along, leaving the barbarian feeling super weird about it. In a flash, a massive green tentacle shoots straight up. The strike smashes the facility's roof with brutal force. Up on the surface, a massive explosion blows the containment entrance wide open, catching Yaren and the manager completely off guard. On the dungeon stairs, the fleeing worker hauls the heavy jugs and feels the insane shaking in the wall. The ceiling starts caving in around the kid, making him realize in pure panic that the Monster King has totally broken loose. Sprinting like a madman through the stone halls, the coworker tries to outrun the collapse. Panting and panicking, he realizes the destruction is right on his heels. Looking back, the kid swears in terror when he sees the threat is literally right behind him. A violent wave of acid and debris tears through the tunnel walls with zero mercy. Right behind it, Wolfgang is booking at a top speed through the collapsing path. The worker finally spots the light of the exit at the end of the tunnel. A huge wave of relief washes over the kid's face, fully believing he actually made it out alive. But out of nowhere, the barbarian pops up and grabs the guy by his collar from behind. Completely shocked, the coworker thinks he just got used as bait for the monster. Without breaking a sweat, the hero hoists the worker up and keeps sprinting full tilt with the guy tucked under his arm. Using all his absurd brute strength, Wolfgang gears up for a massive jump. The warrior chucks his teammate with everything he's got straight toward the exit. The worker goes flying through the air and tumbles across the dirt outside the busted base. Keeping a straight face, the MC braces himself for the incoming impact. A colossal eruption of slime and rubble blasts out of the dungeon, ripping the surface ground to shreds. The monster's massive body stretches high into the late afternoon sky. Yeren and the suit watch in sheer terror as the creature spreads across the entire zone. Sprawled on the ground, the teammate looks up, totally mesmerized and terrified by the crazy view. The colossal beast is finally 100% free, chilling on top of the military base ruins. The worker walks up to Wolfgang and asks why they came outside if the whole point was to beat the king. Holding the creature in his hands, the hero confirms the plan, but explains he made a deal to let it see the sunlight at least once before it's game over. The kid is left totally speechless, blown away by the big guy's unexpected mercy. Right then, the warrior tosses a glowing orb at his coworker, who catches it super clumsily. The Slime King's voice chimes in, saying that's its vital core and it'll be eliminated if that thing breaks. The entity drops the bomb that a piece of its power will transfer to whoever smashes the orb, leaving the worker stunned by the offer. The worker asks why the barbarian is giving up something so incredibly rare, and handing it specifically to him. Wolfgang calmly replies he doesn't need that power, telling him to take it as a thank you, since barbarians always pay back those who back them up. Absolutely floored by how noble the move is, the kid just stares at the hero in silence. Admiring the sunset, the creature says thanks for the epic view right before its core starts fading away in the worker's hands. From a distance, Yeren screams in relief, running toward her partner while he just asks if she came to pick him up. The teammate walks away, carrying the heavy, glowing loot jugs. The manager frantically calls, begging for as many transport trucks as possible to handle all that material. Yeren cuts in, asking to take Wolfgang home, and the guy gives the green light instantly, warning that the accounting is gonna take forever anyway. Shoving the giant warrior into the van, the hunter tells him to get in quick, while he wonders what the massive rush is all about. Once in the ride, the girl wants to know if he caused that total disaster, getting a sarcastic no that she doesn't buy for a second. The archaeologist tells the driver to step on it, listening to her partner excuse himself saying he just kept a promise. She decides to switch gears and reveals someone has been anxiously waiting to meet him all day. The hero's face gets dead serious instantly, hyped up thinking the woman finally scored some clues on Devil House. The van speeds away from the military base under the cover of night. Later on, the other workers hop in their car and ask if the manager isn't leaving yet, but he complains about his delayed paycheck. The guy explains a bunch of trucks showed up, but the process is dragging, so he decided to head out first. Talking on the phone with his boss, the manager corrects a mistake, shockingly stating the loot wasn't 150 kilos but actual tons of it. In a fancy city office, the team leader screams at the guy, thinking it's literally impossible to farm that much slime goo in one run. Hang Mion furiously asks if he seriously expected her to just wire 1,400,000,000 that easily. Totally disgusted by the insane price tag for a single rookie hunter, she tells the staffer to use his brain and investigate what went wrong in that dungeon. Cornered by his boss's rant, the manager yells back, agreeing to the orders and promises to go down into the dungeon right away to check it out. Hanging up, he sighs in frustration, complaining about his boss's massive ego, while his coworker asks what the deal is. The suit complains that the company is refusing to pay the cash and ordered him to look for glitches underground. Pulling up to the base, the guy grumbles that working overtime is depressing, telling the driver to wait in the car while he scopes the place out. Miles away, water blasts out of a metal showerhead in a super modern bathroom. Taking a chill shower, Wolfgang is fascinated by human engineering making water spray right inside a house. He asks his partner waiting in the hall if she knows how it works, guessing they hoard rainwater on the roof. Outside the door, Yeren tells him to hurry up and wash, letting him know they haven't found the demon yet, but a VIP contact wants to meet him. Done stalling, the hero agrees to the meeting and kills the water. The archaeologist leaves a fresh stack of folded clothes for her partner to wear. The barbarian steps out wearing the gear that fits way too small on his giant frame, asking if this guy is really that important to her. The hunter promises to buy clothes in his actual size tomorrow, plus some decent shoes, getting a friendly nod from her partner. Starving to death, he asks if there's any grub in the building, but Yeren tells him to hold his horses so they can do intros first. The girl opens the office door, announcing Wolfgang's arrival to Dr. Choi. The ancient artifact expert stands up to shake the warrior's hand, who introduces himself as a member of the wolf tribe. Staring the expert down, the barbarian mentions he heard this guy is the boss of this archaeology gig, asking where this tribe's base is located. Yeren patiently breaks down that archaeology isn't a tribe, but an academic field that studies history through old loot. Holding the warrior's hand, Dr. Choi cuts the formal intro short and invites everyone to eat, just as the hunter's stomach loudly growls. Soon, a bunch of fried chicken boxes are dropped on the office table for the feast. The host offers up the food and some soda, telling them to pace themselves since he can order more if they're still hungry. Taking a massive chug of his drink, Wolfgang asks why the veteran called this meeting in the first place. The researcher confirms he had a few questions to run by the hero, asking if that's cool and gets the green light to shoot. Analyzing the vibe, the doc notes the guest speaks supernaturally, wondering how he speaks modern slang so flawlessly if he literally just woke up from the past. The MC drops the lore that he got buffed by angels, scoring special skills including the power to understand and speak any language perfectly. Totally mind blown, the guy tries to process what these angels are, asking if that's the name of some constellation. Confused by the word, the barbarian flips the question asking what a constellation is, while Yaren whispers reminding him of the beings he saw during the hunter exam. Wolfgang's brain pulls up the memory of that Spartan warrior named Leonidas. Right after, he also remembers the giant spirit that claimed to be a descendant of the barbarians. Connecting the dots, the hero realizes these weak entities are called constellations, leaving the doc stunned by the blunt insult to divine beings. Not caring about the shock value, the warrior swears angels are on a completely different tier than those pathetic figures, packing way more than enough power to fight demons, recalling that they once visited his tribe to ask for a solid. A bit later, the expert decides to recap the whole crazy story he just heard in his office. He goes over how, back in the ancient era, angels and demons were at war, pulling the barbarian tribes into the crossfire at the angels' request. With a sad tone, the hunter adds that the barbarians got totally wiped out, pushing the last survivor to storm enemy lines solo looking for payback. Dr. Choi follows the logic, noting the hero clapped all the monsters until he faced off against his ultimate rival, Devil House. Clenching his fist in rage, the barbarian listens to the researcher conclude that this was the exact moment he got hit with the spell and turned to stone. Yaren grabs the warrior's arm to comfort him, promising they'll manage to track the target down. The MC looks away, keeping a heavy, thoughtful expression while flashing back to his own memories. The host apologizes for dragging up such brutal flashbacks, but Wolfgang shoots back that it's a past he needs to constantly replay in his own head. With that, the doctor hesitates for a second before asking the guest for one more favor. Keeping his chill, the barbarian just tells the guy to spit it out. Nervous about the request, the expert explains he needs to verify the warrior's authenticity since he was originally tagged as an artifact. Finding it hilarious, the hero sarcastically asks if he really looks like a relic. Right then, the researcher gets out of his chair to prep the required setup. Holding a small, glowing statue, the doc explains it's a tool made by his contracted constellation, representing a warrior monk who led a massive battle back in the day. He asks permission to quickly summon his guardian deity just to verify things, knowing the meet and greet might be a little awkward for the big guy. The barbarian keeps staring at the guy, showing zero reaction to the summon request. Desperate, Yaren begs her partner for a solid, warning that her whole research project to get him officially recognized depends 100% on this little showcase. The warrior just sighs and calls the girl by her name, showing he's a bit burned out by all this red tape. She claps her hands together, promising to do absolutely anything to help him find his enemy, hearing the hero state that he never said he was gonna reject the request. Super hyped about getting the green light, the archaeologist cheers and rushes the doc, who feels insanely honored by the chance. The Buddha's statue reacts instantly, glowing like crazy in the researcher's hand. A massive spirit of a monk pops up in the room, while the system alerts that the entity recognizes the hero and is super intrigued that he ended the era of chaos. Completely shook by the divine lore drop, the expert repeats the line about ending that dark era. The spirit bows deeply, showing massive respect to the warrior who wrapped up the holy war. Rejecting the deity's formalities, Wolfgang says there's no need for bowing, considering the outcome of that battle was just a half-win for his team. As soon as the spirit fades, Dr. Choi pants heavily, feeling the weight of the power draining from his body. He apologizes for cutting the summon short, admitting he totally ran out of magic juice. Thrilled with the test, the researcher says thanks for his time, and happily confirms the barbarian is literally a walking legend from the past. Miles away, the huge underground chamber of the dungeon looks like an absolute warzone after the giant monsters break out. A worker in a hazmat suit stares at the shattered containment glass, totally lost and spooked by the damage. The worker freaks out trying to figure out what the heck happened for the structure to collapse like that. In a fancy city office, Captain Kang Myeon is on the phone demanding to know why the Monster King vanished from the tank. Hearing the report that the pipes were busted from the inside, she angrily asks if the team didn't bump into any smaller mobs crawling around the third floor. The woman totally loses her cool and threatens the staffer, pointing out that not even an advanced tier hunter could shatter that armored glass solo. She presses her subordinate trying to find out who could have pulled this off, confirming that only 2 low-tier hunters entered the zone that morning, one of them being a total noob. The captain processes the crazy fact that this suspect's hunter license was issued less than a day ago. With a plotting look, Mion figures this random guy has to be the real source of all this mess, ordering them to dig up every single detail about his life. Asked on the phone what she plans to do with the intel, she crosses her legs with an arrogant vibe. The exec spills her master plan to sue the rival agency for damages, leak the culprit's identity to the media, and lock in solid proof against them. Screaming, she rejects the $1 million invoice for the farmed loot, telling the staffer to kick the rival rep out without paying a single dime. Meanwhile, at a packed mall, Yaren and Wolfgang are chilling on a store bench, where the warrior hits his partner with a question. He holds up the tiny black credit card and asks why he can't use this weird item to talk to people far away. The girl stutters in shock when she realizes the big guy spent the entire day thinking the bank card was a modern phone. She asks if the agency gave him anything else, hearing the hero say they handed him a way bigger gadget, but he left it in his room because it was too clunky. Yaren sighs, realizing the barbarian totally mixed up what the items do, finally getting why he was ghosting her calls. The warrior asks how he was supposed to know the difference if nobody bothered to explain how this tech worked. Laughing awkwardly, the hunter decides to drop it, promising to teach him everything slowly once they finish clothes shopping. Right then, a store clerk walks up carrying a box, apologizing for taking so long. The kid awkwardly explains that it's the biggest shoe they have in stock, showing off an insanely massive size. Without a word, the hero just stares at the kicks with his naturally intimidating vibe, clearly not used to modern fashion. In another mall aisle, two guys in casual clothes are tracking the duo from a distance using a phone camera. Near the fitting rooms, the girl checks out the new winter clothes and approves the fit, while the warrior grumbles he's not sure he put it on right. Wolfgang steps out of the booth rocking a full dressy outfit, getting a bunch of hype from his partner for the slick new look. The archaeologist fixes his coat collar, suggesting he ditch the hat, but the barbarian complains this fit makes him look like a super old man. Yaren swears this is exactly how people dress nowadays, talking the hero into rocking the style for the sake of blending in. Walking down the wide halls, he sighs, complaining about how incredibly exhausting this human era is, waiting while the girl says she needs to hit the restroom. Seeing the perfect opening with their target alone, the stalkers decide to strike, plotting to get his attention with a cheap shot. Standing outside the bathrooms, the big guy gets confused looking at the signs, not getting why there are two separate doors in the same hallway. Out of nowhere, a masked mercenary rushes him from behind, popping a max speed dash skill. The attacker jumps at Wolfgang and throws a fast strike with a dagger glowing with heavy green energy. Holding the shopping bags, the warrior gets totally blindsided by a sneak attack from the back. A masked hitman rushes in holding a dagger glowing with strong green energy. Right in front of him, a second attacker pops up flexing a fist engulfed in flames. The guy preps a lethal strike, activating a skill focused on a heavy fire punch. Without showing a drop of panic, the barbarian reacts purely on instinct, shooting his left arm out. His defense speed totally outclasses the thug's combo attack. The warrior grabs the fire dude's face like it's nothing, stopping the strike cold instantly. The other masked guy is already trashed on the floor before he can even process what went wrong. Staring down the pinned targets, Wolfgang figures these two cowards were the ones tailing him all day. With a deadly voice, he demands to know who put out the hit. Trying to break loose, the guy grabbed by the head struggles to ask if the big guy belongs to some famous guild. He tells the target to stop resisting and come quietly. As a response to the disrespect, the hero crushes the dude's face with insane force. The brutal pressure from his giant fingers makes the merc scream in agony with nowhere to run. Scrambling up in a panic, the dagger buddy curses, completely shocked by the enemy's freakish strength. He yells at his downed partner, telling him to stop taking a beating and fight back already. Totally ignoring their panic, the barbarian turns his head and says he asked the first question. He wants to know if the Sunction Guild set up this pathetic ambush. Nearby, Yaren waits outside the bathroom looking super bored. The girl sighs, thinking her partner is way too high maintenance, wishing he'd figure out this new era faster. The archaeologist starts thinking the big guy probably doesn't even know how to use a public restroom. She wishes she could go in there and give him a basic tutorial on modern life. Back to the brawl, Wolfgang tosses the enemy on the floor like trash. He tells the attacker to run back and tell his boss they totally botched the mission. The barbarian drops a heavy warning that if they ever bother him again, he's gonna wipe their entire crew off the map. Terrified by the threat, the thugs limp away, cursing the whole situation. With the hallway totally clear and chill again, the warrior picks up the dropped bags. He casually walks over to his partner, who's still leaning against the wall waiting. Walking up to her, she suggests grabbing some fast food before heading back to the agency. Yaren promises to help him figure out the card and phone on the way, and the hero gives a friendly nod. Walking together toward the mall exit, the girl asks if he's craving anything specific. She hypes him up, saying the archaeology doc is footing the bill for this lunch. Just then, her phone buzzes with an urgent notification on the screen. The news headline drops that the Sunction Guild is demanding $6 billion in damages for the giant monster's destruction. Miles away in a private office, a manager sips his iced drink while listening to a stressful report. His assistant reads off the technical specs about the underground containment barrier getting shattered. The assistant angrily details that the rival company totally made up this $1 million invoice so they wouldn't have to pay the agreed cut for the loot farmed yesterday. The boss thinks this blackmail makes zero sense. Annoyed by the headache, the suit asks if the extraction squad from yesterday was really just low tier. The kid quickly confirms he double-checked everyone's paperwork personally. The manager swears he's no rookie in this shady hunter market. He flexes his past as a combat pro, claiming he knows all the dirty tricks the big core pull. To clear things up, the assistant suggests pulling up a security tape during the meeting. He explains the digital file was sent by the rivals as proof to back up their latest claims. The screen clearly shows the footage recorded in the mall hallway. The video captures the exact moment Wolfgang claps the two trained assassins with absolute zero effort. Pointing at the hooded merc on the screen, the kid identifies him as a notorious hunter. He warns that the criminal hides his true power and actually has skills on par with a higher rank. Next, he points to the guy grabbed by the head, revealing he's a recently promoted pro. The assistant looks shocked seeing both of them get totally humiliated by a complete rookie. Putting the pieces together, the exec realizes the official dungeon complaint was just an excuse to pick a fight. The enemies want to find out who hired the giant dude from the video. Furious at the rival's sheer audacity, the assistant slams the desk and stands up totally outraged. He complains their company is getting threatened by people who didn't even have the decency to pay their own debt first. Telling his coworker to chill, the boss crosses his arms and declares that if they have no formal ties to the warrior, there's no problem. He decides to slap the rival guild with a lawsuit to force them to cough up the cash. Passing the collection duty to his subordinate, the manager says he needs to dip to handle another urgent issue. He straightens his suit and mentions a meeting lined up with a super promising recruit. A bit later, the exec jumps into a yellow cab on the city avenue. Chilling in the backseat, he tells the driver to step on it and head to the fancy Qingdam district. During the cab ride, the suit grumbles about the rival corp's cowardly stunts. He sighs exhausted, complaining about how insanely hard it is to save up and buy his own car. All of a sudden, the manager's brain clicks on a massive detail from the video he totally missed before. He stops his own rant with wide eyes, demanding a second to think. Replaying the tape in his head, he focuses on the exact second Wolfgang caught the flaming fist. Confusion hits the guy hard when he realizes the warrior canceled out a constellation's power without having any visible divine contract. The dominating image of the barbarian takes over the ambitious exec's mind. Feeling like he just stumbled on an absolute goldmine, he flirts with the risky idea of testing the hero's power himself. The endgame of this off-the-books investigation is to measure how heavy this mystery fighter really is. The exec needs to know if he found the talent of the century or just some amateur with crazy luck. A few days fly by and the scene shifts to the crowded city sidewalks. Wolfgang casually crosses the crosswalk, making everyone stare because he's carrying a massive sword wrapped in cloth. Checking out the lines on the street, the barbarian thinks the walking rules of this era are pretty weird. He even wonders if the boss of this turf doesn't go overboard bossing the people around. Watching the crowd move as a unit, the hero tries to follow the directions his supervisor gave him earlier. Even though it sounded simple, he admits he's a little lost in the concrete jungle. The frustration doesn't last long as a familiar girl's voice cuts through the traffic noise. Yaren waves excitedly from across the street, clearly relieved to find the big guy in one piece. Walking up to the girl, he swears the dig boss's directions actually helped him find the spot. The girl checks if he brought the bags and points at the Archaeology Association building where the doc is waiting. Opening the door to the cozy office, the young archaeologist announces the field team is here. The expert welcomes them with a huge smile, stoked that they showed up right on time for the tech meeting. Acting super polite, the host apologizes for making them travel all the way across town. Dr. Choi quickly suggests they switch up the vibe and head straight down to the storage vaults. While walking through the lobby, the veteran researcher totally loses his academic cool, fawning over the hero's sword. Annoyed by the crazy hype, the barbarian whispers to his partner asking what the old guy's deal is. Laughing awkwardly, Yaren defends the doctor's hardcore nerd passion for the field. She argues it'd be way sketchier if a historian just ignored a legit ancient weapon walking right past him. Absolutely amazed, the expert notices the old clothes the girl is holding and figures out the pelt is from a legendary wolf. Looking like he's totally over the lecture, Wolfgang just listens to the warning to be careful with the priceless gear. The squad finally clears the security doors of the association's massive storage hall. The dimly lit room protects endless shelves packed with sealed boxes and recovered artifacts. Enjoying the walk, the doc introduces his VIP guest to the young staff in the department. The assistant's jaw drops, instantly recognizing the warrior who was pulled out of the deep cave. Sizing up the giant fighter up close, the researcher shivers, feeling the intimidating aura. He mentally notes that the guy in the flesh is 1,000 times scarier than the old stone statue. Trying to get his academic vibe back, the kid politely reaches out to shake the living legend's hand. He introduces himself as an advanced tier hunter in the research division, admitting this whole setup is just insane. Skipping the small talk, Wolfgang shakes the young researcher's hand with his usual rock-solid posture. Keeping a straight face and a blunt tone, he drops his full name to lock in the formal intro. Right behind him, the second assistant on the team also steps up, flashing a super friendly smile. The kid waves politely at the hero, revealing he's part of the backup crew for the rough digs. Totally changing the subject, the guy waves excitedly when he realizes Yeren is also tagging along for the tour. The hunter smiles back warmly, making it obvious the two go way back in the industry. While they're doing intros, the first assistant gets completely distracted, hypnotized by the gear strapped to the barbarian's back. He steps closer to the massive blade, dying to know if the magic iron also woke up from the petrifying curse. Swelling with tribal pride, the warrior explains the sword is a badge of honor passed down among their local chiefs. Clapping loudly to cut the chatter, Dr. Choi yanks everyone's attention back to the mission. Getting back on the move, the expert says the duo's timing was basically a miracle. He admits the academic team hit a brick wall trying to identify some mystery items and tells them to follow him. Walking through halls lined with bulletproof glass, the hero whispers, asking if the folks in this guild are always this dramatic. Yeren just laughs quietly, telling him to cut the nerdy student some slack. The tour stops in front of a perfectly lit pedestal, showing off an epic giant silver hammer. The host points at the ancient weapon, dying to hear the 1,000-year-old guest's visual breakdown. The doc cuts to the chase, asking if the barbarian recognizes the specs of the combat tool. He drops the lore that the relic was found at the exact same rescue site, but modern tech couldn't scan the magic traces on it. Resting his fingertips on the thick glass, the big guy's eyes drift into some super ancient memories. With a heavy voice, he drops the truth without missing a beat. That was the sacred weapon of Jonas, an old guy who lived at the entrance of his village. A painful wave of nostalgia hits the hero's chest while the researchers listen to the weapon's origin story up close. He describes the fallen warrior as a total Chad who fought for local leadership, and above all was his best friend. Sliding his finger across the cold reflection, the warrior keeps telling the tragic ending of the weapon's real owner. He spills that his best friend had a heroic exit fighting on the front lines of the brutal war against the demons. The sadness in the hero's voice quickly flips into a heavy, silent rage. Pressing his thumb against the glass shield, he admits that after his buddy passed, he took up the sledgehammer as his own personal weapon. The museum room fades from the big guy's mind, swapping to a dark flashback of himself surrounded by mangled bodies. He remembers the bitter days hauling that exact same heavy weapon to crush tens of thousands of enemies on the battlefield. Listening to the brutal vent, Yeren looks down, feeling the actual weight of the historical tragedy. The hunter sighs with empathy, getting all the painful bloodshed hidden inside that shiny metal structure. Shaking off the war nightmares, Wolfgang looks up, flashing an unbreakable resolve to the nerd squad. He drops a solemn vow that he absolutely will not stop until he tracks down and punishes the freak that took Jonas out. Worried about her partner's emotional stress, the archaeologist grabs his left hand super tight and warmly. She begs him with a soft voice to drop this crazy idea of carrying the weight of the world completely solo. The sudden touch on his calloused hands makes the warrior spin around, totally startled by his own walls coming down. He looks at the young protector over his shoulder, processing that human comfort he was never used to getting from anyone. Yeren flashes a comforting smile, swearing that things have changed and now he's rolling with a real squad. The woman promises to stick by his side 24/7 so they can face all the nightmares together. The power of her words totally disarms the big guy's tough shell, and he says thanks for the loyal backup. Super hyped, she promises to pull every string in the Archaeology Association to dig up the hardest clues on where the target demon is hiding. Watching the whole thing, the expert feels awful and bows his head, apologizing a million times for poking at the warrior's open wounds. But the barbarian brushes it off fast, showing huge gratitude that they managed to rescue the priceless gear in one piece. The hero hopes his painful lore drop helped out with the lab's unfinished homework. The doc happily confirms the intel was a massive W, finally proving the mystery relic belongs to the wolf tribe. Right as they are about to wrap up, a sudden instinct completely hijacks the barbarian's chill vibe. His eyes go wide and he spins around super fast, ordering the whole crew to freeze right where they stand. Totally ignoring safety protocols, the warrior shoots his arm into an open display and grabs the handle of another magic tool. Mind blown, he recognizes every single millimeter of the glowing artifact in his hands. The insane power packed in the ancient relic vibrates like crazy the second it touches the pure energy of its original owner. Wolfgang's firm grip holds the base of the item, while blue sparks wrap all the way up his forearm. Freaking out over the reckless move, the team members scream trying to stop the hero on the spot. Shaking with fear, they warn that ripping an unlogged item off the base will instantly trigger the lab's lethal anti-theft barriers. Panicking, Dr. Choi demands to know why the warrior is suddenly pulling a stunt like this, totally mind-blown by the situation. An intense blast of blue energy erupts from the artifact the second the barbarian makes contact with the sacred piece. The expert screams at the top of his lungs, warning that the entity's presence is standing right in front of them. Right then, the MC's brain gets flooded with hardcore flashbacks of ancient wars he fought back in the day. The nostalgic vision shows the big guy walking side by side with a massive, savage wolf through the battlefields. Mixed in the dark memories, the creepy silhouette of the demon that wrecked everything he loved pops up. The barbarian's fist clenches with extreme violence, leaking a thick, dark energy totally fueled by pure hate. Completely consumed by rage after recognizing that vibe, he locks his eyes and drops the name of his mortal enemy. Back in the lab, a rough piece of an arrow is carefully placed inside a sealed glass container. Checking the data on the PC, Yaren asks the expert if the dark stain on the relic could be the hero's blood. She confirms that the traces of that dark energy undeniably belong to that absolute scumbag Devil House. The girl lets out a heavy sigh at the meeting table, warning that everyone would be in serious danger if the barrier stone had fully exploded. The doc bows his head, taking the L for the meltdown, while the archaeologist tries to cool things off, saying at least they got some solid research done. She admits she was already suspicious about the giant hammer ghosting them, but never expected the arrowhead to act up like that. Looking at her coworkers, Yaren complains about the whole mess, pointing out how much easier this would be if they had managed to recruit a demon hunter. The hunter explains that both holy and dark energy run on mana, making it a total nightmare for non-experts to tell them apart. The warrior casually fires back that demons have a totally different vibe, something he just naturally learned to pick up on. Backing up the big guy, the expert grumbles in frustration about how useless the association is for not sending the backup they requested. Soon the girl turns her head toward the doc, double-checking if she missed anything in her thought process. Yaren's brain is working in overdrive, looking super intrigued by the sudden mention of this specific class of pros. She turns straight to her partner, asking how he'd feel about officially changing his class to Demon Hunter. Totally lost, the researcher asks why she's pitching such a wild class swap out of nowhere. The archaeologist brings up the deal they made days ago, where they promised to track down his enemy in exchange for this lab tour. She breaks down that with a high rank, the hero would unlock a database way bigger than what normal researchers get to see. Keeping her smile, the girl points out this special class has clearance to dig through almost all classified intel on the creatures. Even though the role is super rare, Yaren swears the barbarian would ace the qualifiers, since he's got the brute strength and sharp instincts for the game. Totally laser-focused on his revenge quest, Wolfgang doesn't hesitate to ask what he needs to do to cop that title. Super hyped, the girl points her finger, saying it's a breeze. He just needs to pass the guild's promotion exam. But then the hunter faceplants onto the desk, completely burned out, leaving her teammate super confused by the sudden mood swing. The doc drops the heavy news that the big guy won't be able to take that test anytime soon, making the girl lift her head, begging for an explanation. The young assistant brings up the rumors that the sacred relic needed for the test got totally trashed a few days ago. Totally bummed out again, Yaren complains that without that evaluation, scoring the special license is gonna be near impossible. The archaeologist looks down sadly, apologizing to the hero for hyping him up with false hope of fixing the issue. Right then, a new idea pops up in the room, catching the girl and the barbarian off guard with the interruption. The other researcher jumps into the chat, suggesting there's actually a plan B to snag that highly wanted permit. Super chill, the kid explains the perfect loophole for this mess is for him to enroll straight into the academy. The boy breaks down how the cert can be earned through an accredited school, making Yaren curious about the play. The hunter argues the campus is crawling with teenagers, but the assistant counters, reminding them there are also students in their 20s. With that, she turns to her partner, super curious about exactly how old he was before the petrifying curse hit. Keeping his rock-solid posture, the warrior calmly replies that he watched the 4-season cycle 33 times since he was born. The plot twist shocks everyone in the room, making the young archaeologist realize in pure horror that she's actually older than the big guy. Confused by modern slang, the hero asks about the word she used, getting a quick lesson that it's a way to show respect to older folks. Rolling with the rules of this new world, Wolfgang agrees to follow local customs and decides to call her by the respectful title. Super weirded out by the whole vibe, the partner demands he stop calling her that while looking so intimidating and mature. At a hunter agency, a suited worker shows a coworker the ropes on how the dungeon schedules get texted to their phones. Walking down an empty hall, the suit celebrates getting off the clock early and brainstorms his next move. The worker checks his phone, remembering the agency boss promised to scoop up the rookie recruit today. Stopping in front of a closed door, the nameplate flashes the foreign barbarian's full name. The agent's brain replays the security tape, picturing the insane moment the two assassins got launched across the room. He coldly analyzes the split second the big guy palmed the merc's face without breaking a sweat. With a calculating look, the rep figures the warrior is sitting on a tier way above a low-class rookie. The suit's master plan is to test the target's power firsthand, fishing for the perfect excuse to throw hands. Out on the busy street, Yeren walks next to her partner, promising she can totally write him an official recommendation letter. The hunter explains she called in a favor to buy out his toxic contract with his current agency. Watching the duo through Ember Utopia's glass front, the ambitious worker eavesdrops and plots his play. The girl sighs, stressing that the only massive roadblock left is the insane price tag for school tuition. Wolfgang grumbles that this new world is exactly like his old era, where everything always gets fixed with cash. Right then, the corporate agent struts up to the duo, offering to cover every single academic cost they need. Flashing a shady smile, the guy drops one condition, demanding the barbarian do him a tiny favor in exchange for the bag. Staring down the disrespect, the hero asks if the worker seriously wants to eat a full power punch, advising the kid to drop the risky idea. The suit takes a step back, warning it'd be a huge mistake to underestimate him just because he works a desk job. Checking out the guy's build, the archaeologist totally doubts his claim of being a mid-tier combatant. Letting out a sarcastic laugh, the worker catches her vibe and warns that judging a book by its cover can be a fatal mistake. Pulling a mystery item from his pocket, the agent flexes, claiming that with the power of this piece, he could easily throw down with elite warriors. The hunter's eyes go wide, trying to process the crazy threat and praying this is just a cheap bluff. She starts wondering if someone with that much power is secretly pulling the strings at the agency behind the scenes. Locking onto the item the kid is holding, the girl decides she needs to verify the gear is legit before jumping to conclusions. Staying totally chill, the hero tells his partner to watch her back, instantly picking up the vibe of a sacred artifact. Full of himself, the rep taunts the big guy, saying if the relic is protecting him, there's zero reason to fear a single punch. The suit oozes obnoxious confidence, admitting he's dying to test the absolute defense limit of that magic gear. Clenching his heavy fist, Wolfgang orders his partner to back up fast so she doesn't get clipped by the shockwave. A deadly, hyper-focused look takes over the barbarian's face, totally ready to teach the insolent worker a lesson. Squared up for a street fight, the warrior tells the target to summon his constellation already and take the hit. Gripping the item tight, the guy in the suit takes the challenge with a cocky smirk and braces for impact. The mystic medallion glows like crazy, proving the guardian entity actually answered its arrogant contractor's call. A hand made of blue energy aggressively punches through the air right after the relic's blinding flash. The system warns that the constellation is directly possessing its contractor, leaving the worker himself shook by the glitch. Yeren is absolutely mind-blown, not getting how a divine being can just hijack someone's body, or what kind of entity could even pull that off. The agent's face gets swallowed by an intense aura, flexing a wildly confident smile. His whole vibe shifts completely, taking on the traditional drip of an old-school inspector. The hunter tries to figure out the deity, guessing his identity the second she spots the sacred horse seal. Skipping the small talk, the guy introduces himself as Park Munsu, the secret royal inspector. A colossal nuke of power drops from the sky, summoning dozens of spirits all around the possessed warrior. An entire spectral army lines up in a flash, totally ready to back up their boss in the clash. Wolfgang watches the whole scene looking bored out of his mind, calmly asking if he should just clap all of them at once. The inspector promises there's no need to sweat the soldiers, since they're just there to buff his divine power. He drops the lore that his strength punishes the corrupt and scales up based on how evil the target is, so if the opponent is clean, they won't take a scratch. Getting how the entity works, the barbarian just nods and readies his fist. With a merciless swing, the hero lands a brutal, direct punch right to the inspector's face. The crushing hit sends the opponent flying backward. He tries to call a timeout, completely scrambled by the insane force of the attack. The traditional hat goes flying while the guy's body gets launched violently through the spectral soldiers totally panic, losing all sight of the battlefield. In the middle of the dust cloud, Yeren tries to see something, dying to know how the showdown ended. The wind dies down fast, leaving the archaeologist super confused about why all that power just vanished out of nowhere. Looking down the street, she spots her partner standing tall and wonders if the fight is already over. The The barbarian casually asks if the girl got hurt, getting the thumbs up that she made it out completely spotless. The hunter points in terror at the body laid out on the pavement, stuttering as she asks if the worker just kicked the bucket. The suit coughs in pain, frustrated realizing his master plan didn't go down the way he wanted it. The MC lets her know the guy survived, asking if that single punch is enough to cover the school fee. Getting her swagger back, Yaren tells the loser not to forget to pay the tuition and orders him to show up at the academy on Monday. Floored on the street, the rep promises he'll honor the deal without causing any more drama. He sits up struggling, super relieved he didn't feel a drop of evil energy coming off the warrior. Holding his busted face, the worker admits the agency could never afford to throw away such an insane talent. Pure shock scrambles his brain as he accepts he just ate a clean punch, even while shielded by a real constellation's power. Watching Wolfgang's back disappear into the sunset, the agent wonders who the heck this mystery man actually is. The rep guesses the warrior might be a deity in disguise, or something even more broken. Somewhere else, the arrogant student Kim Jinwoo goes crazy training shirtless in the weight room. A metal target shakes violently from the non-stop combo the fighter is throwing. The kid charges up a blue energy in his right fist, flexing massive focus for his next move. With a loud yell, the kid unloads an attack with every ounce of strength he's got. The monoloaded punch explodes against the academy's testing machine. Panting hard, he stares down the result of his grind with a locked-in look. The electronic board starts crunching the exact force of the impact in a flash. The screen flashes the number 2,127 points, making the kid hyped that he's leveling up. A few days later, the massive staircase of the Seoul Academy shows up under the morning light. Yaren sprints up the steps telling her partner to hurry up, listening to the MC calmly reply that he's already maxing out his limit. The archaeologist scolds him, warning that slacking off isn't gonna magically pay the tuition. Further back, the suit pants exhausted and tries to excuse himself saying the cash isn't the issue. It's the painful hangover from the possession. Once in the hall, the agent explains the hero got lucky, since the tests got delayed and the enrollment window got extended thanks to the stunt with the spear. Walking into the office, the worker tells the clerk the candidate already has a license and asks them to fast-track the entry. The clerk hands over the acceptance letter, giving him a heads-up that the rookie will start in Class F until he ranks up in the internal exams. Yaren breathes a sigh of relief at their insane luck, finding it hilarious the hero got in exactly because of the relic he broke himself. The receptionist confirms the school issues direct certs for rare classes like Demon Hunters. A sharp-dressed guy walks up smiling, letting them know he's the professor running that specific class. The girl recognizes him instantly and mutters the name Kim Seoncheol in total surprise. The teacher explains he also handles Class F and asks the new student to follow him while the paperwork clears. Assuming Wolfgang is Yaren's dad, the guy asks the veteran to chill in the room to sort out the tuition fees. Laughing nervously, the hunter points at the barbarian and clears up that the student is actually him. Super embarrassed by the mix-up, the professor tries to save face guessing the hero awakened his powers super late in life. The company agent awkwardly cuts in, wanting to know who he needs to talk to about dropping the cash. Relieved by the save, the professor points at the worker and declares he'll handle all the boring red tape. Meanwhile, the worker who hiked up the mountain pants totally dead, cursing whoever thought it was a good idea to build a school this high up. Walking through the campus gardens, the teacher asks what weapon the rookie usually mains, hearing he runs a longsword. The archaeologist gets curious, asking if low-tier classes already require personal weapons on day one. The professor apologizes for not warning them sooner to leave the blade at home, but the warrior chills him out saying he can summon the weapon whenever he wants. The girl is totally lost by that claim, not getting how he's supposed to use a giant sword that isn't even there. Out of nowhere, a massive gust of wind cuts right across their path. Yaren gets spooked by the person zooming by, warning that pulling that in an open area is super dangerous. The professor calls out to the speedster, recognizing the guy on the spot. The long-haired kid hits the brakes, tapping his shoes lightly on the pavement. With an elegant vibe, the student casually turns around and asks if someone called him. The teacher tells the student to walk the rookie over to the Class F building, dropping the fact that they're both in the same major. Staying totally chill, the upperclassman waves at Wolfgang and asks him to just tag along for the walk. The warrior tells the hunter this is where they part ways, swearing he's gonna be fine. She reminds him he needs to use the phone if things go south, and absolutely forbids the hero from throwing hands without a good reason. The archaeologist repeats the warning with a serious tone, completely banning any kind of brawl on school grounds. Without saying a word, the warrior just turns his back and walks with heavy steps behind his campus guide. The woman watches her partner walk away, praying internally that he actually manages to vibe with the environment. Laughing, the professor jokes that she looks like a mom sending her kid off to boot camp, which totally annoys Yer. Completely destroyed by the hike, the corporate agent catches up and asks about the tuition, while the girl is in the background screaming. Totally outraged by the mix-up, the hunter screams at the top of her lungs that they are absolutely not the warrior's kids. Walking the school halls, the girl spots a wall covered in portraits and asks if it's some kind of hall of fame. The agent confirms it, breaking down how the board flexes the top students of every class, and dropping that he was actually part of the 10th class himself. Pointing at a picture of a short-haired kid, the guy reveals that boy held the #1 spot back then. The worker complains he lost first place because of his trash stamina, mentioning Yeren has probably heard of that famous Constellation contractor. Staring at the photo feeling a bit nostalgic, he comments that the kid could have lived a super easy life since he was an insane talent. The archaeologist remembers Hunter Jinseong for securing contracts for his whole family, but the guy points out it was useless since the kid was always miserable trying to win his dad's approval. Listening to the tea, the woman figures there's gotta be some wildly toxic family drama behind all this. Then the suit details that making it big in hunting was always the family's main obsession, turning it into a heavy burden forced by the dad that ended up becoming the kid's entire life goal. Thinking the guy is way too invested, the hunter notes he knows way too much about someone else's life, getting a weak excuse that it's just an old personal interest. A school staffer interrupts their walk down the hall, saying thanks for waiting so patiently. The receptionist wants to know if assistant Kim Junwon is seriously recommending the foreigner Wolfgang for the academic scholarship. Keeping a massive smile, the agent double-checks that students backed by his company get their entry fee and first semester waived, asking to cash in that perk right on the spot. Shocked by the hustle, Yeren realizes all that effort was just to save a buck, hearing the worker confess he'd never have that kind of cash lying around and would rather just buy a new car. To wrap up the enrollment, the school clerk demands some extra paperwork filled out and leads the agent into the office. Paranoid she's gonna get ditched, the girl tells her partner to wait for her, only getting an annoyed reminder to hurry up and sign the docs. The girl sighs, admitting she's thankful he paid the bills, but confesses she still thinks the suit is incredibly annoying. Trying to shake off the bad mood, the archaeologist changes the subject in her head while she walks. A nagging detail sticks in her brain, bringing up memories of how Hunter Jinseong used to be a massive media darling. Staring at the portrait on the wall again, Yeren tries to find a legit reason for such a prodigy to just drop off the radar completely. Entering the office, the school worker spots a visitor and asks him to chill on the couch, while the enrollment papers get sorted. The corporate agent walks across the quiet room, side-eyeing the mystery guy lounging by the window. Checking out the stranger's face, the suit is hit with a crazy sense of déjà vu and tries to remember where he knows the guy from. A massive wave of shock hits the assistant's face when he finally cracks the identity of the guy on the couch. Totally stunned by the plot twist, the agent stutters, pointing a shaky finger right at the newcomer. Not believing his own eyes, he calls his old buddy by name and demands to know what Jinseong is doing here after ghosting everyone for so long. Meanwhile, the hunter keeps connecting the dots about the elite heir who locked in the divine pact for his family, remembered by everyone as a total prodigy. With the veteran's face stuck in her head, she thinks about his disappearance, 100% sure they've never actually met face-to-face. But when she focuses on her barbarian partner's vibe, the archaeologist picks up a weirdly similar energy between those two stubborn dudes. In another building on campus, the arrogant student Jinwoo grips his backpack, super annoyed that he's too scared to walk into class but can't turn back now either. Standing right outside Counselor Kim Seoncheol's door, the cocky kid curses his awful luck for getting dumped into the Demon Hunter Major, feeling like an absolute loser. Right then, a long-haired guy cuts into his rant, curious why the student is trashing the class like that. Startled by the jump scare, the kid steps back trying to figure out who the stranger is, realizing it's the professor running Class F. Flashing a polite smile, the teacher confirms who he is and recognizes the kid as Kim Jinwoo, the newest enrollment for the semester. Getting back to the debate, the professor asks what he thinks of the class, and the kid totally dunks on the job, claiming the gig is just sniffing out monsters without ever getting into the epic fights. Not losing his cool, Seoncheol explains that tracking is the main goal, but clears up the bad take by guaranteeing the job requires heavy combat, usually before the regular squads even show up. The school orientation gets cut short when the door flies open, revealing a bald dude with a hardcore vibe. The student's face instantly fills with rage when he recognizes the newcomer. Looking totally unfazed, the heavyset guy stares down the room, oozing a completely dominant energy. Totally losing it, Jinwoo rushes into attack, tossing insults at the veteran, mind blown that he had the guts to show up right in front of him. Super bitter about his own downfall, the student blames the newcomer for ruining his life and screams, asking if he has any idea of the hell he caused. Charging his arm with thick purple energy, the kid throws a brutal punch, but the bald guy blocks the hit with just one hand like it's nothing. The magic strike crashes hard against the veteran's guard, setting off a shockwave that echoes through the room. Taking advantage of the opening, the newcomer shoves the kid back using massive brute strength. The student stumbles totally scrambled, while the heavyset dude keeps his arm extended, proving he's completely outclassing the kid in combat. Confused by the random aggro, the bald guy asks what the heck the kid is talking about, and if the rival guild sent him, reminding him that any complaints should be taken straight to him. Lifted into the air by the scuffle, Jinwoo thrashes around furiously and demands to be put down. Seeing the violence spiraling out of control, the professor reaches out, casting a containment spell using a golden aura. The glowing energy pulls the brawlers apart instantly, lifting the paralyzed student as he screams in panic thinking his arm is gonna snap. Annoyed by the block, the veteran stares at the teacher trying to figure out what his deal is. Chuckling friendly, Xianqiao admits he thought it'd be smarter to split them up before the beatdown got worse. Flexing his authority over the room, the counselor drops the rule that fighting on campus equals instant expulsion, and says he'd hate to lose his first students in years. With a friendly smile, the professor suggests settling the beef with a supervised duel, knowing their toxic history makes a peaceful chat impossible. Outside the building limits, the corporate agent walks up to the stairs and throws a shady question about his old buddy Jinxiang's life. The suit mocks the guy's toxic personality and asks point-blank if his crew is still hunting for that mystery power. Switching to a harsher tone, the worker warns his ex-friend to drop the dangerous hunt ASAP. Side-eyeing the visitor, the kid sitting there claps back, telling him to trash that useless horse medallion. The agent admits the artifact glitches most of the time, but defends its potential against folks tied to dark pacts, making it incredibly lethal. Rushing down the stairs, the worker claims this reunion was terrible and asks that they avoid crossing paths ever again. The assistant fades into the sunny courtyard, leaving the hunter alone and deep in thought on the academy steps. Watching the suit walk away, Yaren gets curious about the heavy vibe and totally doubts those two are actually friends. Back in the classroom, the bald guy crosses his arms looking offended, asking if the teacher expects him to fight using only constellation power. Xianqiao brings up the major's main focus, letting him know that only someone who channels divine energy smoothly can track the trails left by demons. The professor declares that mastering this control is mandatory for the job, and that the duel will serve as a practical exam for both of them. The veteran asks what happens if he just fights normally, getting a cold reply that he'd definitely get transferred or expelled. Laughing like a troll, Jinwoo calls his rival an old man and asks how he signed up for the class without knowing the basic rules. Ignoring the kid's disrespect, the heavyset dude double-checks with the counselor, wanting to make sure every move in the fight has to rely on divine magic. The professor makes an exception for the test, giving the green light for mixed tactics as long as the fighters don't actually touch each other. Setting the duo up on the campus tennis court, the instructor kicks off the match, warning that minor bumps are fine but lethal strikes are totally banned. With the rules set, Xianqiao turns to the blue-haired kid and asks if he's cool with it. Surrounded by a scary magic aura, Jinwoo ignores the red tape and tells them to hurry up and start the fight. A glare full of pure hate takes over the student's face. He cracks his knuckles, promising to wreck his opponent's face. Channeling the dark energy, the kid tells the veteran to watch his back while aiming an attack at a cart full of tennis balls. The mystic force grabs one of the balls, levitating it perfectly in the air like a loaded bullet. Firing the object in a devastating fiery flash, Jinwoo screams that the bald guy is gonna deeply regret breathing the same air as him. The flaming attack charges full speed at the veteran, who stands his ground waiting for the hit. The ball explodes right in front of the big guy, leaving a scorch mark and smoke on the court floor. Flexing a purple aura on his fingers, Jinwoo mockingly asks what his rival thinks of his fake fireball. Wolfgang sighs, super annoyed by the whole thing, telling the kid he ruined his era's clothes and it's really getting on his nerves. The student yells from the other side, telling his opponent to just give up and crawl, begging for mercy. With the professor standing between them, the barbarian says they need to talk, but the kid mocks him, thinking he's just stalling. Seeing how stubborn the boy is, the hero quickly realizes this punk is only gonna listen after catching a serious beatdown. Staring the target down with a ruthless look, the veteran decides to give the student exactly 1 minute to show off his entire kit. Far from the court, the archaeologist walks with the corporate agent, who confirms he wrapped up all the tuition paperwork. The duo keeps chatting casually while walking up the outdoor ramps of the massive Seoul Academy. Yaren notices her walking partner acting weird and straight up asks if he's stalling so he doesn't have to leave. Not letting it go, she wants to know what actually went down between the suit and that guy in the building earlier. Trying to play it cool, the worker forces a smile and excuses it as just a normal love-hate vibe between old rivals. The hunter pushes back, reminding him it's been years since he graduated, making the guy confess that time didn't magically heal all the drama. To kill the topic, the girl says the whole thing sounds super messy, but admits she didn't feel any real hate coming from his old classmate. Hearing her take, the worker keeps walking down the stairs, deep in thought about the run-in. Looking down, the guy agrees with Yeren, admitting he kind of felt the same way. The suit's brain replays how hard it always was for his old buddy to show his real feelings, admitting that fixing broken bonds is never easy. Back at the testing court, Jinwoo keeps flexing his ego after showing off his fake fire magic. Cracking his knuckles, the barbarian repeats his warning that the kid has exactly 1 minute to show his actual strength. Right after, a barrage of destructive spells rains down hard on the veteran, kicking up a massive dust cloud. Watching the nuke drop, the professor realizes how sketchy the situation is and looks super worried about the damage. The teacher scolds the student for going totally overboard, screaming a reminder that he was crystal clear about the duel's rules. Completely frustrated, the kid justifies his rage by blaming his opponent for making the constellation tear up his divine contract. Raising his arm glowing with golden energy, the kid promises to finish the job, telling the instructor to pray his rival doesn't end up too broken. Another colossal explosion rocks the court floor, wiping the area with a devastating blast of light. The thick dust cloud slowly starts to clear up on the battlefield. Walking out of the rubble without a single scratch, Wolfgang complains that the clothes from this era are way too fragile and are already totally ruined. The big guy takes a step forward, showing off his insanely shredded physique under the ripped rags. Totally blown away, Xianqial tries to wrap his head around how the rookie student managed to use the magic defense of Fenrir's pelt so effortlessly. Standing in the middle of the court, the hero tosses the useless pieces of his fit while the instructor watches in shock. With a casual flick, he chucks the remains of the dark coat over the tennis net. Confused by his rival's tankiness, Jinwoo demands to know what kind of defense skill he pulled off using that animal skin. Without dropping any lore, the barbarian dashes in with an insanely fast charge, dropping his center of gravity to launch himself. Catching details mid-dash, Wolfgang spots a sketchy mark on the student's arm and instantly clocks it as pure demonic energy. The veteran jumps incredibly high, grabbing massive air superiority while charging up a heavy strike. With a brutal landing, the big guy crushes the court floor, kicking up a ton of debris all around the kid. Just the overwhelming presence of the living legend is enough to completely dominate the zone. The massive shockwave from the slam drags the opponent violently backward. Trying to find his footing, the kid grabs his own wrist, feeling a weird dark energy pulsing out of control. Watching from the sidelines, the professor spots the glitch and is completely shook by the dark reveal. The kid's arm starts shooting red lightning while the dark mark reacts to the fight. Absolutely terrified, the student's eyes go wide, having zero clue why a certain entity is manifesting right there. The barbarian's shadow looms over the downed student, oozing a dominating and lethal aura. A mystic projection of Cerberus takes shape on the court, making the kid ask why the three-headed dog chained itself to him. The entity warns that the student will take the fall for breaking the contract, demanding he sign a new pact with the Hellhound to get his power back. In absolute panic, the kid refuses the deal, knowing the beast is gonna charge an insane price for it. But the dark presence in Jinwoo's head coldly warns that the only other option is literally his own game over. Around the court, the other students run for their lives, screaming that the giant beast is gonna eat them. The student covers his face, shaking in fear, until Wolfgang taps his shoulder, telling him to chill out. The hero promises nobody is gonna lose their life here, explaining that demons just feed off people's fear to get stronger. While the three-headed dog growls, the veteran warns that the creature is about to start demanding the kid's own lifespan as payment. With a dead serious look, the barbarian mentions he's seen countless humans make these trash deals, ordering the kid to take a deep breath and face the enemy. The student stutters, saying he can't do it, while the instructor preps a golden spell to jump in. Deciding to set an example, the big guy says he's gonna show off something special to prove that dark energy isn't the real path to power. Surprised by the move, Xianqial smiles, finding the veteran's strat incredibly fascinating. Out of nowhere, a storm of blue aura starts leaking from the hero's body, totally taking over the area. The magic wind leaves both the teacher and the student completely mind-blown by the sudden power flex. A colossal blue mystic wolf spawns on the court, totally bullying the dark being's presence. Wolfgang greets Fenrir and suggests they test the old buddy's fangs, making the three-headed dog completely freeze in pure terror. The wolf entity complains that the enemy already lost the will to fight, asking if he was really summoned just to spook that pathetic mutt. The barbarian says nope, revealing he just called his old partner to announce that the hunt against the shadow creatures is officially back on in this new era. Staring his old bro down, Fenrir notices that even after 1,000 years, the hero is still hardcore chained to the past. The spirit decides to dip to save the warrior's energy, promising to give the rest of the divine squad the heads up about his epic awakening. Floored on the ground, the student tries to process what he just saw, totally unable to believe he heard a summon talk like a human. Meanwhile, out in the school courtyards, Yeren sprints like crazy trying to find her partner. Right behind her, the agent complains, telling her to speed it up, annoyed that the paperwork delay is ruining his schedule. Suddenly, the worker stops dead in his tracks and gets the hunter's attention by pointing at the sky. The suit focuses on a massive object flying at top speed through the clouds, asking if that doesn't look super familiar. Down on the court, Wolfgang casually looks up, confirming his package finally found the right drop spot. The heavy ancient blade cuts through the air, spinning wildly right toward the testing arena. The warrior smiles, feeling good about his delivery, while the dark hound goes into absolute panic mode as it gets closer. With a booming crash, the giant sword lands, ripping up the floor right in the dead center of the battlefield. Later on in the office, the professor explains that dark packs actually aren't illegal for demon hunters, since they make tracking hard targets way easier. Chilling in his chair, Xianqiao asks why Jinwu went for this shady shortcut, pointing out the kid has a prodigy brother and a filthy rich dad. Xianqiao questions why the student chose to sign a deal with a demon. He notes that with his family's massive bank account and clout, scoring the sacred artifacts for a proper contract shouldn't have been an issue. Staring the kid down, the barbarian patiently waits for an answer. The warrior makes it clear he won't push the issue if the kid decides to drop out, but he demands a straight answer if he actually wants to stay in the demon hunter class. Deals with creatures of the dark offer instant buffs in exchange for horrific terms. Playing counselor, the big guy warns that the specific pact with the Hellhound costs half of the contractor's lifespan. Totally shook, Jinwu realizes the mess is way worse than he thought. Slumped on the floor, the kid panics, hearing that his own time alive would be eaten by the creature. The student gulps, trying to find the words to explain his garbage choices. With a bitter tone, the boy confesses he's the outcast of the family. Back in the day, his older brother managed to lock in an op contract with the Barbarian Constellation. The whole clan threw a massive party for the prodigy's epic W. Their bloodline carried the heavy prestige of historical martial arts backed by insane wealth. The boy's dad quit fighting to become a huge corporate boss, but his dream of getting respect in the martial arts world never died. The older son's success made the Constellation's buff spread to the rest of the family. The patriarch felt like his dream was finally coming true through his heirs. While the whole house was popping bottles for a perfect future, Jinwu felt totally left out and miserable. But the second son had zero talent and ended up trashing everything. Because of the problem kid's screw-ups, the divine entity canceled the contract with the entire clan. Ticked off by his own memories, the student blames the opponent who wrecked his fake flex during the admission exam. Annoyed by the accusation, the hero asks how that's his fault. The kid thinks the veteran got offended for being compared to a constellation, but hears that the real issue was the sheer ignorance of not recognizing the legend of Wolfgang. Flashing back to the admission exam, the boy remembers the massive spirit begging the big guy for forgiveness in a total panic. The warrior clears up that the punishment for the kid's disrespect ended right then and there. Anything that happened after was strictly a beef between the kid and his protector deity. Keeping his ruthless vibe, the veteran explains he was ready to be chill and let the disrespect slide. However, the abuse of power demanded a hardcore reality check. The flashback shows the ancient entity agreeing with the hero instantly, revealing that dropping the hammer was the plan from the start. With the wisdom of ancient wars, the barbarian figures the divine being already had major second thoughts about the deal it made with that greedy bloodline. Outraged by the theory, Jinwu jumps up screaming that the whole thing is ridiculous. He accepts being called trash, but defends his older brother as an absolute genius who would never be rejected if they were competent. Wolfgang calmly fires back, warning he doesn't know this so-called prodigy brother to judge. The only hard fact is that the kid standing in front of him failed miserably at wielding the barbarian's power. The core issue was never the kid's lack of natural talent. The real glitch was the arrogant way he viewed and used the power he was gifted. The hero drops the verdict that if the rest of his relatives act with the same ego, they are just straight-up incompatible with the pure ideals of his tribe. Somewhere else, boxes and files are being rushed out of a luxury office, signaling a sudden crash in the family guild status. A guy who looks a lot like the student, just with a more mature vibe, listens to the reports about the brawl at the academy and realizes his little brother is involved. Fueled by rage, Jinxiang curses his younger brother. He storms out demanding to find the problem child right this second to settle the score. Outside the Soul Academy, a guy sprints like a maniac down the stone paths, racing against the late afternoon light. Yeren picks up the pace, telling Agent Junwen to hurry up. The archaeologist warns they are gonna be totally bankrupt if the barbarian causes another disaster on campus, reminding the worker his job is also on the line. Completely gassed out, the suit trips on the main stairs. He curses the school's massive hill while trying to catch his breath to finish the climb. In the academy courtyard, Jinwoo drops to his knees begging for his brother's forgiveness. The kid takes all the blame and swears he'll figure out a way to fix the mess he made. Clinging to Jin Seong's leg, the student cries in absolute despair right in front of all the other students and school staff. Totally disgusted by the public embarrassment, the veteran delivers a brutal kick to shove his own little brother away. The violent hit launches the younger kid away, making him slide hard across the campus grass. Sprawled out and in massive pain, the boy can barely open his eyes while taking the cruel fallout of his screw-ups. Furious, the family prodigy tells his brother to stop crying like a loser. He drags the kid for ruining everything and just standing there looking dumb. Jin Seong steps up and starts bullying his downed relative without a shred of mercy. The veteran screams in rage about moving mountains to enroll the dead weight in the school, only for him to trash another sacred contract on day one. Watching the whole mess from the upstairs window, the barbarian asks the counselor if his presence is gonna cause any drama for the school. The professor admits it could be a massive headache if he decided to follow the rules by the book. Locked onto his goal, the hero repeats that he needs the special license and demands to know if there are any real roadblocks. With a calm smile, the teacher chills the warrior out, swearing the situation is the exact opposite of a problem. Down below, the beatdown continues. The veteran tells his brother to stop stalling and just take the L, demanding total submission for his academic fail. Back to the office chat, Seoncheol sizes up his partner and claims he already knew about the student's dark contract way before the duel. The big guy confirms the read, explaining he just needed time to lock onto the professor admits with pure respect that when it comes to channeling a constellation's energy to track tough targets, the guy's skills totally outclass any active pro. Even being the best in the biz, the teacher confesses he only noticed the student's dark pact way after the barbarian did. The hero's power flex left a deep mark on the counselor. He admits he didn't even know which entity was hiding inside the kid until he saw the guard dog get violently yanked out by Wolfgang's dominating power. Listing the guest's crazy skills, the counselor highlights the insane spatial distortion he pulled off like a master in the arena. Right after, the teacher hypes up the top-tier summon magic used to call the ancient wolf entity and bully the three-headed dog. The professor is even more mind-blown, remembering the telekinesis-style trick. The barbarian used to literally pull his own sword through the sky of soul. Stunned by how versatile he is, Seoncheol asks the real reason why someone this overpowered would enroll in a basic school, admitting he's never seen a skill kit like this. Annoyed by all the stalling, the hero harshly tells the guy to cut to the chase and hit the main point. The counselor suggests the rookie take a rank up exam to skip the tutorial levels. Since the endgame is just the license, it'd be way smarter to prove his raw strength than waste months sitting through boring theory classes. But something catches the professor's eye out the window. He cuts his own pitch short, noticing the situation outside just completely shattered the academy's peaceful vibe. Down on the campus grass, Jin Seong's aggressive kicks keep slamming into his younger brother, flexing a toxic family rage with zero limits. Sprinting in a panic to break it up, Yeren crashes the scene and demands this brutal beatdown stop right now. The archaeologist steps in front of the downed victim, screaming in pure outrage, trying to understand why this unhinged attack is happening in the middle of a school zone. Turning his head with extreme disgust, the veteran tells the intruder to back off and rudely asks who gave her the right to stick her nose in private family business. Before things go totally south, Agent Junwin grabs his old buddy from behind and begs him to stop before he causes a literal tragedy with his own blood brother. The crazy attacker thrashes around, demanding to be let go and complaining about the interference. Using all his strength to hold the unhinged kid back, the suit demands answers for this brutal personality flip, reminding him he never acted like this back in the day. Blinded by rage, the ex-friend ignores the emotional plea and tries to justify punishing the youngest. Suddenly, an absurdly heavy slap smacks the veteran dead in the face, shutting down the chaotic argument with a violent crack. The jump scare leaves the worker and the hunter completely frozen in shock. Having dropped down from the building in seconds, Wolfgang watches the scene next to the teacher who just handed the cocky kid a reality check. Gripping the attacker's wrist with a vice-like hold, the white-shirt professor points out that fights between hunters outside danger zones are strictly illegal. Plus, starting a riot on campus grounds equals getting instantly expelled. The counselor tightens his grip, making it crystal clear that the real issue was pulling this unhinged stunt without his direct permission. With a dark, dangerous smile, the teacher warns he has zero tolerance for people breaking rules right in front of his face. Radiating an undeniably scary aura, Seoncheol ruthlessly advises the veteran to shut the whole circus down right this second. The instructor's eyes glow with a pure threatening energy. He drops the ultimatum that if the kid wants to keep fighting, he'll clear out the courtyard so they can throw hands on equal footing right then and there. Shook by the local boss stepping in so hard, Jinseong asks why the guy referred to the useless youngest brother as his own official student. The prodigy gulps, unable to accept reality, asking if the school is seriously gonna enroll someone who failed miserably at making basic contracts with deities or even trash-tier demons. Standing next to the injured student, the counselor swears the lack of a magic pact means absolutely nothing to him. The kid's limits don't mess with the institution's ability to forge new talent at all. The veteran stares at the group in total silence, feeling his own face pulse like crazy from the handprint he just ate. Keeping a chill and locked-in look, the professor just waits for the intruder to take the L after making the school's boundaries incredibly clear. Crushed by the overwhelming flex of authority, Jinseong turns his back, cursing his knocked-out brother. He caves to the instructor's pressure and gives the green light for the kid to officially join the academic program. The defeated kid powerwalks toward the training yard's main exit, leaving the heavy, toxic vibe behind him. A bit later, the sign for Building F's medical center shows that the victims of the outside brawl were dragged in for proper meds. Chilling on the white bed, Jinwoo rests peacefully while his bruises fade away. Agent Junwin tells the hunter that the school zone runs potent healing spells, fixing up surface damage incredibly fast. Watching the kid sleep like a rock, the teacher smiles, feeling kinda bad about the whole mess. He figures the real injury that needs fixing isn't physical, it's the young student's totally shattered, dependent mental state. The hunter wants to know if this whole mess was entirely the older brother's fault. She grills the teacher, trying to piece together exactly what went down out there. The professor stalls for a second before answering. His brain tries to map out the best way to explain this messy family drama. Thinking back to the argument, the student was screaming in rage about how his brother was a literal genius. The kid thought it was totally unfair for the prodigy to lose his powers, arguing that only he should have taken the hit for the fail. Right then, the barbarian asked what power was being misused. Totally blinded by fanboying, the kid just kept repeating how brilliant his relative was. Jumping back to the present, the veteran stares at the teacher in disbelief, hearing that the useless youngest was actually enrolled. He questions the school's call, pointing out the kid can't even lock in a basic contract. While the prodigy whines about his brother, the teacher holds his ground. The instructor orders him to just let the kid enroll in peace. Staying totally chill, the professor figures one thing is for sure in this whole circus. He guesses there's some crazy deep lore that only those two family members know about. Right then, the hero kicks the infirmary door open, cutting the chat short. Totally out of patience for stalling, Wolfgang announces he's bouncing. The counselor asks if the big guy scooped up the remains of the three-headed dog. The warrior confirms and drops a warning for nobody to touch it, since the dark energy is still live even after clapping the creature. Miles away, the agent walks with his old buddy in the academy parking lot. Junwin demands answers for that wild attack, reminding him they could have hashed this all out by just talking at home. The worker points out the kid he assaulted is literally his own blood. Not caring at all, Jinseong tells the suit to keep his nose out of his family's toxic drama. Annoyed by the cold shoulder, the agent notes the veteran changed a lot and asks if this ties into his recent ghosting act. The prodigy tells him to stop jumping to conclusions, swearing he has his reasons. Junwin seriously doubts there's any logical excuse to bully your own family like that. Losing his temper, the ex-buddy curses the worker's obsession with always playing the justice inspector. The heavy vibe tags along as they walk through the lot lit by the sunset. The gap between them makes it obvious how much their old friendship has iced over. Once inside the car, the agent switches gears and asks why his buddy stopped digging into his own dad's past. Keeping a bitter tone, Jinseong spills that he made that call because he quit the association. The worker asks if the association knows the family patriarch has been playing around with forbidden powers. The suit wants to verify exactly how much the bosses know about this mess. He connects the dots himself that the leaders don't know the full story, admitting he buried a lot of details in his official report. The kid warns the guild is gonna go nuclear if they find out the truth. The heaviest bomb drops next. The agent straight up accuses his ex-friend of secretly using a demon's dark energy on the down low. Unfazed, Jinseong turns his head and stares the worker down in the driver's seat. The prodigy sarcastically figures the guy only kept quiet about it because of their old friendship. The tension in the car gets even thicker. The veteran admits he doesn't know if he should say thanks for the agent's loyalty or if he should hate his guts for being so nosy. Without reaching any kind of peace, the car pulls out onto the highway, glowing in the late afternoon sun. The paths of the old friends seem to drift further and further apart. Night drops over the city, lighting up the massive front of the Archaeology Association. The academic hub is still buzzing even after closing time. In one of the rooms, the young researcher stares at the barbarian in shock. He tries to double-check if the hero seriously wants to use the dark beast's carcass to forge a suit of armor. Casually sipping a soda, Wolfgang confirms the plan. The big guy asks the lab to hook him up with a skilled blacksmith to get the job done. Totally lost by the medieval request, the assistant begs the hunter to take over the explanation. Yaren sighs exhausted, trying to figure out the best way to break down how modern shopping works. The girl patiently explains that nowadays, nobody hires blacksmiths directly. She details there are specialized manufacturers that supply this kind of gear. The warrior suggests tracking down these corporations, but the archaeologist shoots it down. She pitches selling the monster loot on the black market and using the cash to buy the perfect suit without the headache. Rolling with the plan, the hero asks his partner to put up the listing. In exchange, he demands the girl keep helping with the research to track his original target, which she instantly agrees to. Switching topics, Wolfgang asks what kind of gear they should pick out with the farmed cash. He admits he has zero clue what to buy since the armor isn't even for him. The wild plot twist leaves both researchers totally confused. Yaren stutters in surprise, asking who the heck the barbarian is trying to buy protective gear for. Miles away, in a luxury office, a guild boss gets the latest updates. The secretary very professionally confirms that the guard dog's pelt was actually listed on the market. The gray-haired boss pivots to another urgent headache. He notices his youngest son, Jinwoo, still hasn't come home from the academy after classes wrapped. The assistant breaks down the brawl at the school, detailing that the dark creature tied to the kid got totally demolished by some guy named Wolfgang. The report wraps up saying the student ended up in the infirmary after getting jumped by his older brother. Staring at the city skyline, the patriarch spits the hero's name with disgust. Instantly, he orders the cleaners to be dispatched to fix the mess without leaving a single trace. The secretary tries to pitch a different angle, but gets harshly shut down. The boss says they just need to keep the useless kid alive solely to keep the family prodigy's mental state in check. With the call made, the leader orders them to grab the trash kid from school so they can decide his fate. Right then, Jinseong quietly slips into the room, catching the tail end of the chat. Spooked by what he just heard, the older son asks them to hold up a second. The dad asks how long the heir was eavesdropping at the door. Shaking with nerves, the kid lies, saying he just walked in and heard absolutely nothing. Catching the lie, the patriarch swears he doesn't need to fake it, since there's no reason to fear the family's master plan. The kid apologizes while the boss reveals the grand awakening is right around the corner. The leader's face gets twisted by a dark ambition. He declares that once the plan drops, all the power in the world will belong to their bloodline. The shady promise leaves the veteran absolutely terrified. A drop of cold sweat rolls down the kid's face as he tries to process his own dad's insanity. Unable to handle the room's heavy vibe, Jinseong says he needs to bounce. He turns his back and rushes out of the office, desperate to escape that crushing presence. The second the son leaves, the boss's tone flips again. He orders the secretary to keep a 24/7 watch on the prodigy's every move to avoid any surprises. Back in the academy infirmary, the youngest kid wakes up with a jump, gasping for air. The jump scare of waking up in a weird place leaves the boy totally scrambled. To the student's shock, Wolfgang is already standing next to the bed, handing him a shirt. The hero points at the kid's chest and warns him that a demon's mark got branded right there. The older brother explains the dark symbol got carved into the youngest's body. He tells the student to use the mark to lock in a permanent pact with the demon. Jinseong orders the kid to agree to whatever the creature asks for. The veteran argues that, as a specialized hunter, this energy will be enough to boost the kid to a decent combat tier. Totally disgusted by the idea, the youngest refuses to sign a deal with the dark, swearing hell grind to win back the star's favor. Trying to stay chill, the brother insists he needs to do this right now. The vibe gets super desperate when the prodigy warns that without this shield, the student is gonna end up dead. Jinwoo shakes, asking if his brother even knows what their dad would do if he found out about this rebellion. The youngest points out the patriarch wouldn't hesitate to wipe out his own kids. With a dark tone, Jinseong swears this pact is the bare minimum insurance for survival, guessing the family boss might actually love the villain move. Stressing about the future, the student spills that the clan leader spent years trying to wake up that forbidden power. He warns that soon the family will have a force that not even the association can ignore. Knowing the cost of the pact is literally half his life, the kid begs for another way out. He desperately asks the veteran to tip off his association buddy to stop the patriarch's crazy plan. Looking down, Jinseong shoots down the request instantly. The heavy weight of responsibility and fear totally silences the silver-haired kid. Tears roll down the older brother's face, confessing his friend would get wiped out if he tried to step in. He begs the youngest to just listen, swearing this is the only shot they all have at surviving. Shocked by the family prodigy crying and panicking, the student is left speechless facing such a tragic reality. Beaten by the pain and tears, Jinwoo lays back down on the bed. The kid mutters his brother's name while accepting the brutal fate waiting for them. Out of nowhere, invisible hands grab the youngest's feet on the bed. The jump scare makes the kid scream in terror, thinking a ghost just raided the med bay. The door flies open, revealing the barbarian and the two hunters. The hero demands the intruder surrender peacefully, while the student thrashes around trying to break free from the sneak attack. Popping stealth magic, the invader vaults out the school window. The mystery figure sprints through the shadows of the night, trying to escape as fast as possible. Rocking a cap and a dark mask, Jin Seong runs across the rooftops. The veteran's brain is racing against the clock, feeling the massive urgency to make a move before his own dad puts his plans into action. In the academy office, Counselor Seongcheol stretches in his chair after a crazy long day. The teacher notices it's already getting super late into the night. Using the dark, Jin Seong quietly sneaks into the professor's room wearing his disguise. The veteran searches the place, trying not to make a sound. Surprised by the late-night visit, the instructor smiles and asks in a friendly way why his ex-student is dropping by at this hour. The focus shifts to a hallway in the school dorms. The masked guy slowly opens one of the doors, making sure the coast is totally clear of guards. Peeking into the pitch-black room, the invader tries to double-check if this is actually the right spot. Moving fast, the kid pulls back the curtain hiding the main bed. He gets ready to jump the target sleeping in the room. Heavy frustration hits when he stares at perfectly made, totally empty sheets. Confused, the masked guy wonders where the heck the guy living here went. The veteran curses under his breath, annoyed he missed the target. He was almost 100% sure he'd find the guy crashing there and tries to guess where he could have bounced to. Suddenly, golden energy wraps around the invader's body, lifting him straight into the air. The kid thrashes around trying to figure out what the heck this containment spell is. Stepping out of the shadows, the professor keeps the magic active in his hands. He mentions he was already suspicious of the veteran, while the kid stutters, totally busted. Flexing massive pressure, the teacher orders the student to come with him quietly. The low-key threat makes it clear things are gonna get way worse if he causes a scene. In another part of the building, Jinwoo falls on his butt looking terrified. The student screams, demanding to know who the barbarian is and why he won't stop chasing him. The big guy announces he's gonna make the youngest his very first underling, ordering him to strip down so he can take his measurements. The kid panics, thinking the demand is completely insane. Flexing boss energy, the hero reminds him the kid wants a celestial pact instead of a demonic one. Yeren and her buddy peek at the scene, while the veteran promises to talk the barbarian deity into a new deal if the student proves he's not completely useless. A spark of hope lights up the outcast's face. Unable to believe the pitch, the student gets emotional and asks if he really has a second shot with the stars. The hero warns he can't make any promises about the future, but points out that if the kid proves he's a warrior worth respecting, he'll have a legit reason to get backed up. The unexpected promise leaves the student totally frozen, not knowing how to act under so much pressure. Trying to process the shot at redemption he just got, he takes a deep breath, catching his wind again. Desperate for a chance to rebrand, the youngest drops to his knees, hugging the veteran's leg, and begs to be trained, demanding to know what kind of fighter he needs to become. Staring down at the kid, Wolfgang drops the verdict that starting right now, he is going to become the ultimate shield warrior. The class pick catches the kid totally off guard, making him stutter, super confused about the path his partner just locked him into. Somewhere else, the agent tells the hunter he's got all the measurements and figures. They just need to track down the perfect gear for the rookie's training arc. Yeren agrees with the strat, explaining the main goal is to score a massive shield that fits the kid's size perfectly, totally scrapping the need for any other weapon. The worker gets it and mentions he's hyped that some buyer just ordered a guard dog carcass on the black market, guessing they can order the custom piece right away. Cutting into the chat, the barbarian suggests it's smarter to check the materials in person before swiping the card, making the archaeologist ask in surprise if they're doing a late-night run right now. Carrying a giant bag on his back, the student asks out of curiosity who bought that stuff off the market, praying hardcore it wasn't his own dad. The fear of bumping into the family boss makes the kid tense up, praying internally that the patriarch has absolutely nothing to do with this shady deal. Right then, the girl drops an urgent warning that she just got a text from the academy professor demanding answers. Miles away, Jin Seong turns off his phone screen on a desk in a sketchy, dimly lit office after listening to the voicemails. Staring the teacher down, the prodigy loses his cool and demands the counselor start explaining what's actually going on. The veteran angrily asks if the professor got another mark and is trying to force the youngest into a dark pact again, asking if he even knows the tragic price tag for pulling something like that. Seeing the instructor's heavy silence, the kid figures he's not getting any answers and decides keeping things quiet is the best move for everyone. The teacher advises the ex-student to run far away, swearing he's down to help with whatever, but hears the kid tell him to stop poking his nose into something this deadly. Turning down the backup, The prodigy drops the bomb that the youngest is being guarded by the hero and the Archaeology Association, letting the professor know he won't need to babysit the kid anymore. The kid's sudden refusal to let his brother stay in school shocks the teacher, who cashes in the old promise to take the student in. Putting on a strict face, the instructor points out that hunters in this class face demons head-on, demanding an extreme level of trust that can't be handed to someone just using the school to hide. The guy offers to turn the campus into a legit safe house, but demands the ex-student explain exactly what's going down with his family before they shake on it. Slumping in his chair, the heir spills that all this started because the patriarch was never chosen by a constellation, even though he was a highly respected martial arts master back in the day. The kid complains that the company's cash couldn't buy clout in the modern era, confessing that even the pact he managed to secure was recently cancelled by the stars. Holding an invite to a high society hunter party, he exposes how fake the industry is by sharing that his invite got pulled the second news broke about him losing his powers. With a look full of pain, the veteran warns that the clan leader would never just sit back and take that kind of disrespect, leaving the rest of the dark lore unsaid for the teacher. Connecting the dots super fast, Xianqial is stunned realizing the martial arts master resorted to a heavy-duty dark pact just to get his status back. The kid stresses that this mess is totally out of their league, doubting the official association even has the guts to step in against his own dad's insane moves. Trying to make sense of the recent beatdown in the courtyard, the professor asks why he went so hard on his brother, thinking the violence was totally uncalled for even with the broken pact. With massive guilt in his eyes, Jinxiang confesses the patriarch has already lost his mind and almost killed the youngest, revealing he tried to force the dark pact on the kid just to keep him breathing. Gripping his sword sheath tight, the prodigy admits he beat his brother in public just to stop his dad from making a lethal and permanent move against him. The vibe gets incredibly dark when the kid reveals the family boss already called in the cleaner squad to sweep the city. Totally outraged, the teacher jumps up, shocked by the sheer nerve of bringing an elite criminal syndicate that hunts high rankers into the country. Seeing the counselor's shock, the veteran doubles down that the problem is way too massive and that the school could never handle it. Taking the heat for his aggressive stunts, the young guy accepts whatever punishment the professor throws at him, justifying he pushed himself to the absolute limit so his little brother wouldn't lose his life. Gutted by how serious the whole story is, the instructor sits back down, admitting the situation really is out of his hands now. Resentment takes over the heir who blames his own failure for this entire disaster, fully believing his dad would still be sane if the Constellation contract hadn't shattered. Seeing the ex-student's pain, the professor listens to the kid confess he could never just stand there and watch his dad hurt his own brother. Flexing a ruthless determination, Jinxiang swears he's gonna find a way to fix this family nightmare, no matter what it takes. The next day, sunlight hits the academy's outdoor training grounds right in the middle of the modern city. Still wiped out, the student faces the new phase of his training arc with a totally dead, soulless look in his eyes. Oozing charisma, the worker hands a giant silver shield to his pupil, promising the kid is gonna put that heavy-duty defense to great use. The heavy chunk of metal spins through the air and lands perfectly in the hero's hand. He praises how light and durable the gear is for a total noob. The student grumbles thinking the strat is super lame, complaining there are infinitely cooler options like running swords, spears, or hammers. Keeping a hard face, the veteran tells the kid to stop daydreaming and accept his own trash stats, warning he wouldn't even scratch a real enemy with the pathetic strength he has now. The warrior explains the game totally changes with a shield, since maxing out defense is at least gonna guarantee the kid stays alive in a real fight, making the boy ask if he's basically being called useless. Straight to the point with zero sugarcoating, the barbarian confirms the pupil is weak, and points out he still can't unlock the real power hiding inside him. Catching a charged punch from the kid without breaking a sweat, the instructor praises the brute force of the hit, but warns that basic brawling will never be enough to take down a creature of the dark. The big guy counters the strike, generating a massive aura around his fist, teaching him that the real hack is unleashing the full power of his entire body at the exact moment of impact. Getting dragged backward by the crushing force, the student uses the shield to block while hearing that if he had this kind of control during the duel, he wouldn't have had to cheat with the dog's dark energy. The heavy lesson totally shuts the kid up. He finally drops his guard, processing his own lack of skill and maturity. The scene cuts to the massive mansion of the Hunter family patriarch, totally isolated in a premium zip code of the city of Seoul. Hidden away from the public eye, a secret staircase leads down to the sealed door of the estate's underground bunker. Inside the creepy room, the clan leader shows zero mercy as he wraps up the final stage of a sacrifice, using a guy pinned down by his own suited goons. Bathed in the aftermath of extreme cruelty, The martial arts master curses the official association and swears to conquer the top of the world solo using this sick new power. The dark liquid of the sacrifice slowly drips until it completely fills an ancient magic stone chalice. The heavy drops echo in the bottom of the magic cup, triggering the first sparks of forbidden magic all around the room. A giant red circle lights up the basement floor, reacting directly to the life force handed over by the totally unhinged patriarch. Raising the cup with a completely psychotic look, the man calls out to the Supreme Lord of the Dark, offering the blood like a totally loyal lackey. Outside the family mansion, dark clouds swallow the sunny sky, while the patriarch's screams demand the absolute destruction of all the modern world's order and hypocrisy. A creepy vortex rips through the skies above the quiet estate, forming a massive red eye right in the middle of the storm clouds. The wife smiles, totally enchanted watching the ritual start, celebrating the guarantee of absolute power that will dump even more cash into the family's vaults. Scarlet magic flares violently across the floor, demanding all the flesh and life available as a toll to push the spell forward. Puddles of dark energy bubble out of control in the center of the altar, throwing the gates of the abyss wide open for the entity's arrival. An orb of purple power pulses like crazy, tearing the air apart to summon the crushing, ancient presence of the Forbidden Lord. A massive pillar of pure red energy erupts from the ground with maximum force, blowing up the stone structure of the underground room. The patriarch's eyes go wide with absolute wonder, hypnotized by the sheer scale of the dark power he just woke up. Without a single warning, a colossal beast hand shoots out of the abyss and violently snatches the head of one of the loyal guards. Caught completely off guard by the trap, the lackey can barely struggle while taking the instant fallout of that terrifying summon. Fear totally replaces the greed on the martial arts master's face. He backs up stuttering and begging for chill when he sees how aggro the creature is. The desperate begging gets completely ignored while multiple tentacles rip through the room, sweeping up the rest of the guards in absolute chaos. The demon's true form finally drops in the basement, showing off a terrifying posture locked down by chains in the center of the wreckage. Terrified as her nightmare comes to life, the wife shrinks back calling for her husband, asking what the heck went wrong with their flawless master plan. The backlash of the ruthless ritual splashes violently across the room, hitting the totally stunned family leader right in the face. Bathed in the brutal sacrifice of the humans in the room, the giant spiked demon stares down its new, fragile servants with a creepy, dead silent look. The colossal beast hoists the captured guard up like a toy, flexing all its rage right in front of the martial arts master. Horrified by the gory scene, the wife stutters calling for her husband, while the patriarch stares at the mess in absolute shock. The demon opens its massive jaw, showing off nightmare fangs totally ready to chomp on its prey. In a ruthless move, the creature crushes the lackey completely, splashing sinister energy all over the ruined basement. The dark being's red eyes lock onto its next victim, leaking an absolutely crushing pressure. Panicking, the family leader tells the secretary he lost control, revealing in pure terror that his own body is moving by itself. Miles away, Jinseong hears his dad's voice echoing in his head, begging someone to call for backup. The secretary also picks up the agonizing cry, hearing the boss order them to call his sons to stop this total disaster. Getting swallowed by the shadows, the martial arts master tries to warn them of the danger while he can still hold onto a shred of his own mind. The energy from the dark ritual hits the entire city, staining the moon deep red in the night sky. Random people on the streets notice the freaky glitch, getting totally spooked and having no clue what is happening to the world. Walking down the dark sidewalks, the older son feels his phone buzzing like crazy in his coat pocket. On the other end of the line, the secretary screams in panic calling for the air, warning that an absolute tragedy just went down. The worker can barely choke out the sentence about the family leader, making the prodigy realize his dad actually pulled off the dark master plan. The scene shifts to the basement of the Archaeology Association, where the squad gears up to kick off the youngest kid's combat training. Looking around, Junwin asks how they're gonna spar in such a cramped warehouse, worried that one wrong move is gonna trash the priceless artifacts. The hunter agrees the space is tight, taking the chance to advise her pupil to stay chill, since he loses his balance whenever he attacks too recklessly. The big guy warns that losing control leaves massive openings for the enemy to counter, reminding him how he exploited that exact flaw against the kid in their last duel. Taking a deep breath to shake the nerves, the student grips the heavy gear and promises to try his best to follow the tips. Locked in on the survival lesson, Jinwoo drops his center of gravity and raises the massive silver shield, locking into a super solid defensive stance. The warrior tells the kid to keep his base solid, and calmly warns that he's gonna go easy on him for this first impact test. Out of nowhere, Wolfgang fires a straight punch right into the metal defense, setting off a violent boom that shakes the entire room. The insane force of the hit kicks up a massive gust of wind, making Yaren shrink back, totally spooked by how loud the crash was. Behind the metal wall, the youngest grinds his teeth, feeling the colossal pressure trying to crush his entire body in one go. The brutal strike drags the student several meters backward, tearing up the lab floor while he fights for his life not to get launched. Panting and shaking from pure exhaustion, Jinwoo angrily asks if that was seriously the instructor's definition of a friendly tap. Casually checking his own fist, the hero praises the pupil for not eating dirt, pointing out he kept his promise and barely even grazed the shield. Nearby, the worker and the girl stare at the wrecked lab floor, totally speechless at the insane damage. The barbarian orders the kid to perfectly memorize that feeling and stance, getting an exhausted but rock-solid yes from the rookie. Analyzing the flex, the agent internally admits the big guy takes teaching super seriously, remembering he's a rare talent with an overpowered score on his resume. Listening in, the hero sarcastically asks if they are talking about that exam prop he shattered with a single tap, leaving the agent totally embarrassed. Right then, the phone left on the equipment table starts buzzing non-stop. The worker casually picks up the call, totally clueless about the heavy news waiting on the other end of the line. Meanwhile, the barbarian keeps dropping harsh critiques while his partner smiles nervously, roasting how the pupil drops his guard way too fast. The training vibe dies instantly when Junwon screams in terror on the phone, demanding they repeat the crazy intel he just heard. In full panic mode, the suit announces he has an emergency to deal with and sprints like a madman toward the building exit. The hunter worriedly asks what kind of disaster just happened, while the warrior puts on a dead serious face, feeling a massive threat nearby. Outside, Jinseong gets the tragic breakdown and freaks out, confirming his dad actually pulled off the absolute worst dark descent ritual possible. The suit figures out from a distance that this went from a bad contract to a total apocalypse, cursing the unstoppable insanity of that family. Badly injured, the secretary reports the martial arts master was still fighting to stay conscious when he managed to run, begging them to hurry and try to stop him. Trying to carry the weight of the mistake, the heir tells Professor Seonchiol he'll handle this solo, asking the teacher to just call the cops. The instructor shoots the request down, reminding him that summoning a demon deletes the family drama excuse and strictly requires his presence as a pro hunter. Shook, the lackey, tries to tag along desperately to save his own wife, but Jinseong tells him to stay put and SOS their emergency contacts. Done hesitating, the student and the teacher sprint at top speed through the dark city streets, straight toward the source of that nightmare energy. Down in the basement, Wolfgang officially calls it. Things are definitely not normal, and tells his partner he needs to bounce instantly to check out that creepy vibe in the... The archaeologist chases her partner, complaining about the lack of backup, accusing the big guy of making up excuses just to dodge the boring cleanup duty. Pushing through the building doors, Yaren gets confused, seeing the sky as pitch black, knowing for a fact the sun should still be shining out there. The warrior's eyes gleam with a predator's look as he focuses 100% of his attention on the invisible pressure suffocating the area. With a rock-solid voice, he claims a dark being literally just spawned in the world, leaving the girl absolutely in disbelief at the drop. The barbarian asks why she's so shocked, bringing up the pupil's bad pact, but the woman explains a legit physical spawn is unheard of and doesn't just happen out of nowhere. Gulping hard, the hunter starts fearing the absolute worst, hearing the hero announce that the safety rules of this era are probably about to expire. A savage aura starts leaking out of Wolfgang's body. He gets hyped up, guessing the darkness finally decided to launch a full-scale invasion on the surface. Purple lightning cracks through the air, fueled by the veteran's will. He feels the weight of waiting over 1,000 years for this exact showdown. Miles and miles away, Jinseong runs like a maniac down the empty sidewalks, burning all his speed to reach his house gates. The kid grits his teeth, fighting his own burnout, praying internally with massive anxiety that he doesn't show up late to the disaster zone. Ignoring keys or warnings, he uses brute force to bust the security chains and clear a path straight into the estate. The prodigy freezes dead in the middle of the garden, eyes wide open in pure terror at the apocalypse his dad's choices just unleashed. The brutal energy of the dark ritual rips colossal cracks into the mansion's dirt, completely wiping out the clan's fancy setup. A giant laser beam of pure red magic nukes the house from the inside out, shooting up like a tower of flames straight into the corrupted sky. Trying to block the violent shockwave, the air screams, begging for the patriarch in the middle of that absolute war zone. Through the dust and wreckage, the kid looks up, trying to put a single thought together while staring at that absurd power. The prodigy stutters, shaking from head to toe, asking what the heck that giant, terrifying spawn even is. A non-stop beam of ruby energy keeps blasting down from the glitched moon, carving a deep scar right into the heart of the modern city. The catastrophic crash of the magic pillar against the dirt shakes entire blocks, spreading a wave of destruction across the premium district. Totally confident in his game plan, Wolfgang grips his ancient blade and calmly orders Yeren to find a safe spot far away from there. Super stressed by how risky this is, the archaeologist tells him not to be a hero and to fall back, warning that the official guild's full backup squad must already be on the way. Ignoring the advice, the big guy crushes the concrete under his boots to charge up a massive jump. Using totally broken physical strength, the hero takes off tearing through the metropolis sky while hauling the heavy sword like it's nothing. The drag from the liftoff straight up vaporizes the street pavement in a huge radius, proving just how insane the ancient warrior's jump actually is. Flying fast as a missile straight for the energy pillar, the barbarian declares the enemy better gear up for the absolute worst hunt of their life. Back in the ruined backyard, the red flames eat up every single piece of old material glory hoarded by that greedy family. The older son struggles to catch his breath in the toxic smoke, choking on the dust while desperately searching for survivors. Panicking, the heir stares into the fire begging for his dad to take back control of his own brain and not hand his body over to the dark. As a cruel reply to his begging, a giant spiked chain shoots out of the red hell with surgical precision. The cheap shot ties Jinseong up and yanks the kid into the air, making him scream from the unbearable pain of getting caught by the monster. The monster's shady hand grabs the magic chain, answering the heir's desperate call by confirming that his old man is gone for good. Pinned to the ground by the glowing links, the kid hears the creature cruelly tell him he doesn't need to feel so bad about this sudden loss. Right then, the giant demon drops its dark goal to wipe out absolutely every single human in the world, kicking it off right with Jinseong and the martial arts master.